Even in CC and politics, they'll be like, "Shut up, redhead," and I'm like, "What? What? My hair is not red at all."
Wait, your hair's not red?
No.
Really?
It does look red. Like,
it's very red.
I gotta say.
Wait, do you just have like a red filter on or something?
Wait, what'd you say, Alice?
I said she's lying to you. It's red.
What? No! What?
So, welcome everyone to Amazon Lily, a roundtable, which you have Tuesdays 8 p.m. Eastern. That's for the YouTube audience out there. And we've got an amazing group of guests here. Hopefully we'll have more of them for you soon. Even so, the ones we have right now are fantastic. So we'll start by introducing them. We'll go with my illustrious mod, Eris. Mod, producer, really. Eris, how are you, Eris?
I'm very good. Thanks for making me, reminding me I'm not a mod.
Okay.
Just a little.
It's the second time I've done that. I did that to Venom Jesus the other day. Go ahead.
We're supposed to introduce ourselves now?
Sure.
Okay. Hey, I'm Aristocracy, otherwise known as Eris. I am a streamer, and I also run Calliopean Club, which is a big brain server that currently hates me right now. But that's okay because I have a stream, so my stream audience likes me. So you should definitely follow me on Twitch. My Twitch is just Aristocracy TV. I am a history grad student, and I like bringing a historical perspective to, current events and all that stuff, and I just like really interesting ideas and dealing with them in a charitable kind of way. And yeah, thanks for having me, Prime.
Thank you. Next we'll go to Alice. After all, Alice, thanks for coming yet another week to this channel. Very much appreciate you joining us here on Lily for so many weeks in a row.
No worries. It's honestly super nice to be here. This is like my favorite panel for like more chill stuff. I stream on Twitch. Feel free to follow me. You'll never guess what my username is on Twitch. And of course, you can find me on Calliopean Club. So please do join us there. Ignore all of the people whining in Calliopean Club. It'll be fine. It'll all work out.
Yeah, there's drama there. I'm always outside of this drama because I'm not on Twitter. I never know what's going on, but it's probably for the best.
It's silly drama. Don't worry.
It's fine. So stupid.
It almost always is. Okay. Next we have Maddie Cakes. Maddie Cakes. Why do you call yourself Maddie Cakes? I think is the real question here.
Well, so it was actually a nickname given to me by my friend Yvette, who's also known as Afro Sabi. And my name on Twitter used to be Maddie Care for All. And then she used that and made a bunch of puns with my name. And our favorite was Maddie Cakes. So I decided to keep it. And I mean, I'm a sugar fiend. So what's not to like?
Fair enough.
Yeah, I'm excited to be here. I've been here so many weeks in a row with Alice, and it's the best.
Agreed. All right. Thank you so much. Next, we have Riverboat Jack. Jack, one of our all-stars coming back at us. How are you doing today, Jack?
I'm doing good. I've had a chill day, got a lot of work done on a tabletop RPG. I'm having a good time. And now I'm here, getting to hang with you people.
Creating a tabletop RPG or playing one?
Creating, yeah.
Wow.
Kickstarter coming up sometime this year.
Really?
Yeah.
That's so cool.
Yeah. Well, when it happens, please let us know. We'll advertise for you here, definitely.
For sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, my name's Riverboat Jack. You can find me streaming socialist propaganda and talking about the news and politics of all kinds over on twitch.tv/riverboatjack. You can find me on Twitter under the same name. And I like to have a good time and take cute selfies. That's basically all I do.
Okay, fair enough. Next, I will go to Empress. Empress, hey, buddy. How are you doing today?
Oh, I'm doing great. As of today, I am officially a Twitch affiliate. So getting those sweet
Congrats.
subs. Hey. Speaking of, you should sub to Prime. Sub to me, but also sub to Prime.
Yeah. Sub to all, right? You have
sub to everyone, really. Just sub to everyone. For those of you who don't know me, I am Empress on Twitch and Twitter at Professor, a wa instead of an o. I'm a political scientist who works in human-computer interaction. I do some cool stuff. I say some cool stuff, if you like CC, you'll like politics even better. Come to politics.gg. It's great.
What? Politics even better? That's okay. I'm not okay with this. Prime kick
Look,
Empress
all I'm
off.
saying, the numbers don't lie. The numbers don't lie.
Okay, that's just because we're more exclusive. All right. Okay.
Okay. All right. Thanks so much. Last but not least, and probably not last because there's other people coming. Is Lyra. I think I got it right the first time.
Yeah.
Hooray!
You did it right this time.
All right, I won't be able to keep it up. But Lyra
It's fine.
is back. We're very excited to have her. We wondered if we could have her on more of our programming here, and she agreed, and it was great, which is very fortunate for all of us. Lyra, how are you doing today?
I'm doing pretty good. I was very frazzled and all over the place, but now I'm finally getting settled down. So I'm very excited for today too, because we have some really good topics, and everyone seems really nice. Like just from everyone, like with the other panel that I'm in, ABE, whenever I join those group chats, everyone like knows each other already. So it's like everyone's straight for the net. But like with this Discord, everyone was all nice and tell each other like, "Oh, how was your day?" And I'm like, this panel seems so nice and kind. I'm excited.
It's a big difference, yes.
Yeah. I mean, I like both panels. I like both, but I'm ready for some chill vibes.
Okay,
Some chill.
Empress, you've been on both. What do you think of AB versus All Black Everything versus Amazon Lily?
I think that AB tends to get a little bit more fired up, though. Yeah, I feel like it definitely gets more fired up, a little bit more controversial. I don't know, but I think there's a lot of parallels between POC issues and women's issues. Queer Theory writes about this a lot. I'm gonna keep. Is this just like Shill for Queer Theory Day? I feel like that's what it is.
Sure, why not? Yeah. Hold on. I'm being bullied right now in my own chat. Here we go.
I'm very upset. I'm very hurt. I'm feeling unsafe.
Out what? Out Shill.
Oh my god. the notorious Doobie.
Yeah, Doobie's getting it on in chat. He wants a CC war apparently.
Oh goodness.
Okay. Sorry, Doobie. She bullied me. I can see what all those things you told me about her. I mean, it makes sense. I get it. But anyway, moving on. Really appreciate you all coming through. So let's get started. Topic 1, and this is about the UK. Trans children and their families say they have been broken following a High Court decision, UK High Court, to raise the age of consent for young people accessing puberty blockers. On December 1st, the High Court ruled that those aged 16 and under are unlikely to be able to give informed consent to start puberty blocker treatment, which stalls the onset of puberty for younger people questioning their gender. Do you think 16 and under is a fair cutoff for hormone blockers? If the youth 16 and under that are questioning and exploring their gender are just on hormone blockers and not hormones outright, what's the problem? Do you feel that hormone blockers could cause harm on younger teens/children? What's wrong with making the transition starting point the same age as the age of consent, since we feel that younger youth are unable to give consent mentally and emotionally? Okay, so it's, well, all these are long questions, but yeah, I think it's an interesting question. So, which has parallels to what's happening here in the States too. But yeah, so they're trying to stop children who are thinking of transitioning from using hormone blockers, not even just hormones, but hormone blockers. And wondering, does that all make sense? What are the implications of this? All right, so we'll start with Eris.
Okay, so I have like mixed feelings on this. On one hand, I've heard like a lot of like different stats on like, I guess, like the science behind the effects of hormone blockers. I've heard that it has like there's 0 negative effects. Then I have heard that there are some negative effects, and also they're fairly new, so we don't know like the long-term stuff. And there's also, I think, a concern with hormone blockers, particularly about just like the psychological effect of extending adolescence. to a point when usually hormone blockers are used to wait until the person is an adult and then they start taking hormones, right? So that's extending adolescence and extending childhood by nature. So there could be all these, like, this is a fairly new thing. There's all these problems associated with it. There's problems for people when that's happened to them just naturally because that does happen to some people with issues with their hormones. So I have heard like problems with that. The thing is that it often seems like the alternative is worse, where you don't give someone hormone blockers and then they have to deal with all of the effects of coming to puberty in a body that gives them body dysmorphia. Dysmorphia is that the right word, Alice? God,
Dysphoria, gender dysphoria.
I was literally just gonna say discord.
Body dysmorphia is different, but we can get to that in a minute.
Okay, I'm so sorry. I always get them mixed up. It's so terrible.
Everyone does.
And so like that can be really traumatic and probably is more traumatic than the other things, but I don't know. I'm not a psychologist, right? So to me, it just seems like a very private decision between like a doctor and the patient. And as long as the doctor is not under any kind of undue like pressure, and they're just following what is best for their patient and what the science is telling them, then I feel like that's more of a private decision than something the government should be involved in.
Yeah, thank you so much. Alice.
Yeah, so I've done like a lot of research into this, and because I was hearing the same things, like, oh well, it has no effects, no negative effects, and it has like, actually it has really bad negative, all sorts of weird information. So, like in general, the 16 is arbitrary, just pretty much like 18 is. It's an arbitrary number. I would support something more like Tanner stage, like Tanner stage 3, for instance, in puberty as a point to start blockers. And the reasoning for that is one of the negative effects is like stopping puberty too early is going to make it so that things don't develop how they need to. And if you were to ever choose some surgical option, you will not have that option if you start too early. But like, other than that, there's not really huge negative effects. Like there's, bone density loss. That's true. That does happen. But most people who go on blockers, or they don't stop. It's not like people are going on blockers and then stopping. So like, part of me says like, yeah, we have to have some sort of age, and 16 is a pretty good cutoff for where somebody is able to like understand the side effects. It's also close to Tanner stage 3, which is where the cutoff seems to make sense anyway. In general, we don't start transition that early because it is the middle of puberty. And slowing puberty down like that doesn't actually cause, as far as we can tell, mental effects of any sort. There's no evidence of that either. You're not stopping puberty and childhood. All the things that are happening are still happening. A lot of those things are going to be social development and brain development. That's not stopped or slowed with blockers. So I don't necessarily know that I agree with the court decision at all, but I do think we need to have some sort of age limit, for blockers. And that's, we're going to get into more of this. But
Okay. Next, Maddie.
Yeah, because this is something I admittedly don't know a whole lot about, just because, like, I think what I've learned as I started researching is that this is extremely complex, and there are a number of different implications, both like biological and ethically. I think one thing I've heard that has worked really well is when before someone has entered puberty to use blockers, and why, past a certain age that may present issues. But again, like it's something that's debated. So I'm really looking forward to this conversation because, I mean, just from my own standpoint, I want to learn more about what to think about this. Normally, I would say I would look to advocacy groups of people who would be affected by this kind of change to see what their take on it is. Because obviously, me coming from a more like privileged, non-marginalized group, my take, it just doesn't hold the same weight than if I were someone who would be directly impacted. So I'm really looking forward to the discussion in general.
Riverwood Jack.
Yeah, I mean, first off, I think limiting it to use at like age 16, that's a bit late. Like the entire point of puberty blockers is to block puberty. And so if you're doing it at 16, you're already like starting to go through puberty before then. Like we all know that. one of the things that often gets overlooked is that puberty blockers aren't just used for transgender people, they're also used for cisgender people, and they were invented for use with cisgender people. And they've been in use in cisgender people since the 1980s with remarkably little like ill effect. You haven't heard people complaining about puberty blockers until suddenly it's trans kids who are being like prescribed puberty blockers by doctors who believe that puberty blockers have mostly beneficial outcomes for trans youth. And frankly, like that's what we should be basing whether or not kids get access to this medical treatment on, what has the best outcome for them. And just because a fraction of people decide later that they don't want to transition, and you know, it might have some negative outcome for them, I don't think that we should be like legislating around the 0.01% of people who detransition or choose not to transition. And I think we should be advocating for the majority, like you wouldn't want a doctor to be like, well, I'm not going to prescribe this treatment that is 99.9% effective for you because there's a 0.1% chance that it might have a bad outcome. Now, all of that is just like really basic stuff, but it gets mired under so much misinformation and fear mongering by people who don't want trans people to fundamentally exist. And frankly, I think we should be caring more about the outcomes for trans youth than we should be caring about the fees of parents who are uncomfortable with the idea that their kids are trans.
Thank you. Next, Empress.
Yeah, I think Riverboat Jack hit the nail on the head at the end there, right? In terms of the science, it's fairly clear on the efficacy of hormone blockers as a treatment, at least at this point in time, as far as I'm concerned, both as a safe treatment and as an effective treatment for transgender youth, as well as transgender adults, right? The research has consistently shown that transgender youth who socially transition, are gender affirmed, and undergo hormone therapy have significantly less psychiatric morbidity, tend to have very few side effects associated with these that are negative, right? So this discussion, at least in terms of legislation, isn't about evidence, right? It's very clearly about something else that's underlying this, which is at least it seems to be, a deep-seated hatred of trans people and a desire for them not to exist within society, right? Or this idea that being trans is bad, depending on where you look at it, which rhetoric you're looking at. And I think that's utterly disgusting, right? And I think it's telling that, just like so many other scapegoats, it kind of seems to be distracting from a lot of the real issues going on in politics right now. And it seems like it's just it was drugs, it was the gays, and now it's trans people. It's one issue after another. It seems very clearly politically motivated, and I think that's the more interesting conversation here. Why target trans people, right? What are they trying to distract from? Because the science is settled.
Okay, great. Let's go to Lyra.
So with this topic, I would say I'm more in line with how Maddie put things so wellly, where I'm kind of at like a crossroads too, but the only reason I'm at that crossroads is because I don't understand the science behind hormone blockers that well. But from my like very surface level, especially compared to the scientists on the panel, it seems that like it's a lot. It's less, I guess, tends to be less negative side effects as opposed to like taking the actual hormones. Like as Riverboat Jack explained, the hormone blockers just kind of extend adolescence a bit. Which when I hear that, I'm just like, oh, Pug, what's wrong with that? Why? I mean, why not let people stay in that not limbo, but like in that adjustment period until they decide what gender they want to be? Like, what's wrong with that? And I'm all for it. And the only reason why I would even slightly be a little, maybe pull back that age a bit if it's like over health concerns. But like if the scientists are saying it's okay, I'm all for it. I'm all for it. So
I've heard such Sorry, we're not allowed to debate yet, right?
Not yet.
Yeah, in just a second.
I'm so sorry, Larry.
It's okay.
Well,
but
yeah, go ahead, finish.
Oh yeah, But yes, so if according to doctors, if the doctors say that like it's healthy and there's not a lot of negative side effects to lowering that age to whatever hormone blockers are allowed, and I'm all good for it. I'm more willing to just trust science on this one, because I know I personally don't understand how hormone blockers work. In terms of making it an ethical issue, I think it's stupid. Just let people be whatever they want to be, especially if like this is the reason we have not the reason we have hormone blockers. Like, I didn't know cis people also use hormone blockers. I'm learning so much today already. I just got here, but it's meant to help people figure out what stay in that adjustment period, have an easier transition to whatever gender they want to be. So it's like, why not just let people go through this adjustment period? So like, just let people decide in their own time. Let people take the transition at their own pace. So I don't think the only thing that would make me say let's worry about the age is what health effects would have. But I mean, if doctors are saying it's fine, then I'm with it. It's fine.
Science doctors?
Science doctors.
Science doctors.
Yeah.
As
Dr.
opposed to
Science.
history doctor.
So last but certainly not least, we have Tina. Tina, who has had negative prep time for any of this.
Honestly, everyone's already said what I've been thinking anyways. So Lyra's already said everything that I've been thinking. So it's just repetition at this point.
Well, Tina, what you can do is introduce yourself to the stream and to me, because you're brand new.
Mm-hmm.
I love you.
I love you too, Jack. I am Tina_2. I cover politics from a leftist perspective. I cover Canadian news from time to time because I'm Canadian. I stream every day from 11 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, and come check me out. We have good times together. We have very good times together.
Okay. All right. Thanks so much. All right. So we're in it. So guys can jump in.
I just want to start out because a lot of people have misconceptions about how puberty blockers, like you even get your hands on puberty blockers. So I just want to make sure we're kind of like on the same page. And there might be outliers where this isn't the case, but generally this is how it works. You go to mom and dad, I think I might be trans. I have all these difficult feelings. Mom and dad go, cool. Well, you know what? We're going to take you to the doctor. We're going to see what they say. You go to you go to your GP, and this is assuming you have supportive parents and a supportive general practitioner, and your general practitioner is like, man, that does kind of seem like gender dysphoria, but you know what? We're going to send you to a specialist, like a child psych gender specialist, and you'll talk with them. They'll make a final diagnosis. So they refer you to a gender therapist. You go see the gender therapist. The kid talks. If they think that kid is really experiencing some severe symptoms of gender dysphoria, extreme discomfort, they're going to be like, okay, well, you know what? I'm going to write you a prescription for hormone blockers. And all this does, and this would probably be around 12-ish, 13-ish. All this would do is delay the onset of puberty for a couple years, 2 or 3 years. And then around 16, they'd be able to just be like, okay, and they continue seeing that gender therapist during that time. They continue seeing doctors during that time. And around 16, they're allowed to kind of make the decision, okay, well, maybe I am not trans. And so they just go off of the hormone blockers. There are no long-term negative side effects that are significant. Now, there are side effects because it is a medication and all medications have side effects. Even taking fucking Advil has side effects. But for the most part, they're fine. And we know this because we give hormone blockers to 9, 10-year-olds who have precocious puberty. But if then they decide, oh, I'm going to go on hormone replacement therapy, then they're free to do that. And then they just go through one puberty instead of having to do 2 puberties, because turns out 2 puberties can have a lot of rough effects on the body, and it really expensive and negative side effects on your brain, because you're going through a thing that you really, really don't want to have happen to your body. And so generally there is a correlation between allowing kids to go through with hormone blockers and hormone replacement therapy and lowering their rate of suicidality. So when you see people online talking about, oh, trans people, like all want to, like half of them want to kill themselves, and it's like, yeah, if they don't get the support around them from like their doctors and friends and parents, yeah, a lot of us are really depressed about that. But if we get the support, then it actually comes way the fuck down, and we don't have to experience this existence where we want to die all the time. So if you want fewer kids trying to kill themselves, you should probably support puberty blockers and not put an arbitrary age restriction on it.
Alice, then Empress.
Yeah. So first off, puberty blockers, somebody said they don't know how they work. Puberty blockers stop your body from producing the stuff we need to make hormones. So it stops that process entirely. I say entirely. It stops it significantly, enough to the point where it essentially is not happening. The side effects that people are talking about, the long-term side effects, are bone density loss. That's the primary side effect that we know about. So people who are male, who are assigned male at birth and take puberty blockers, they will have a loss of bone density. They'll have the bone density that someone who is female would have, or close to it, which is not really. You're going to have the bone density of a female person. Wow, that's not really a big side effect. So yeah. And then the other thing I just wanted to address is I think we don't need to do this, but we should be more clear about what we're talking about. So there's multiple approaches to when to use puberty blockers. Some people have talked about like they have to be like really early, they have to be like later. So right now, Tanner stage 2 is where puberty blockers are used. And they're used at Tanner stage 2 until around the age of 16, depending on the doctor and the kid and etc.
What's Tanner age 2? Like, I don't. Yeah, I know it's probably like some random stage in puberty, but.
Yeah. Yes, it is. What is actually Tanner stage 2 is the first visible signs of puberty.
Okay.
Yeah, breast buds, things like that, in females, and like hair growth and stuff. Well, no, I'm sorry, not hair growth. That's after Tanner stage 2. So first signs of puberty is Tanner stage 2. The only thing I think that maybe I'm missing here is I think some people are talking about like that we should start hormones like at 16, or we should start blockers at 16, or things like that. We should like settle down where we are, because like blockers or puberty delaying, hormones are different than like cross-sex hormones. Mm-hmm. So we should just like pin down what we're talking about.
Yeah. Also, but just as a quick clarification, no one here is talking about like kids getting like genital surgeries. Like, I don't know. No one, at least no one I've encountered in the trans community has ever, or in the scientific community, is like, yes, 12-year-olds should get bottom surgery. No, that doesn't happen. I know you might have heard that on Joe Rogan. Joe Rogan's an idiot. And so like
he do be saying dumb shit
when we're talking about like we're talking about bottom surgery for kids. We're talking about bottom surgery for kids. That doesn't happen until after 18. Like at 18 at the soonest, and that's because they're legal adults who can do what they want with their bodies.
Right. Yeah.
Look, all I'm saying is I'm going on that carnivore diet. I just really quickly, if I may, wanted to address
destroy my large intestine. Yeah. Sorry.
Yeah, I think Riverboat Jack, you kind of vaguely hit on a really important point there, which is what drives trans suicide rates. So there's actually a really good study from UCLA on this specific subject. So they found that 98% of their respondents had experienced 4 instances of discrimination and violence in the past year, thought about suicide. 51% of those attempted suicide that year. 13% of respondents who had been denied equal treatment because they are transgender reported suicide in the past year. 6% of those who had experienced such treatment reported attempts in the past year. 11% of respondents who had been rejected from their families reported suicide attempts in the past year. 5% of those who had not experienced such rejection had attempts in the last year. Right? 30% of respondents who were physically attacked in a public place attempted suicide, compared to 7% who were not similarly attacked. 9% of respondents who wanted but did not receive gender affirming care attempted suicide, compared to 5% who did not. So it seems like there's kind of this myth that trans people kill themselves because of gender dysphoria. By and large, while there are some instances of this, of lack of care leading to trans suicide, this is by and large not the driver of trans suicide. And I think that's what people have to get through their heads, because people are saying like, oh, we shouldn't, mess with kids who are already, dealing with so much. It's like, yeah, maybe we should create a less traumatizing environment for those kids, right? Maybe then we won't actually have these kinds of problems, because the evidence shows that the reason that they're committing suicide by and large does not seem to be gender dysphoria. It seems to be a lot of that combined with many other different factors that are high predictors and correlates of suicide. And those seem to be the better predictors compared to gender dysphoria itself.
Okay, is it fair to say that it's a combination of gender dysphoria and the way society treats you as a consequence of that, right? Because I just would wonder if trans people don't all have gender dysphoria, right? So I would just wonder if they have, like, I guess, the same suicidal rates, right?
So
because of that.
I mean, it's one of those things where we need more research done, but generally the overwhelming amount of research that I've seen and looked into tends to indicate that while we might not be able to discern with 100% accuracy how much pain is being inflicted by gender dysphoria internally in each person's mental state, we can discern that people who have supportive environments like lower their risk of suicidality and suicidal ideation by like 1/16 of like what it would be without that support. So if we can if we can create the supportive environments, then we can look more into like how much pain gender dysphoria causes
and get into like the
that.
details.
Yeah, but overwhelmingly the big thing here is changing people's attitudes towards transgender people, especially trans youth, so that we can create the supportive environments they need to be able to grow up and be happy and healthy and like not be completely fucked up.
Okay, so here's how like I would push back against some of this, right? Because I've already said that my personal opinion is I think that this is not a government issue. It's something between like it seems to be like a medical thing, right? So it's between a doctor and their patient, and that's it. I know I'm cis, I think, and I got hormones when I was younger, right? Just to deal with a hormone issue I had. So like, and I would have been really upset if the government was telling me that like that was not okay. So yeah, it just seems like a private issue. But what I would push back against, I guess I don't want us to be just saying like the science is settled like completely on this. I feel like that's a little irresponsible to be saying, because I've heard so many conflicting studies about stuff. That's why it seems like such a controversial issue, and that's why I think it is a personal decision with your doctor, right? Because it is like it's like where you're just weighing the positives and the negatives. It doesn't seem to be like very firm. I mean, there are stats that I've heard, and please tell me if they're true or if they're just from some TERF website that just got leaked and people just thought it was legit. Like there's a stat that I've heard that's being like repeated a lot, right? That 80% of people that identify as being trans when they're under 18, I guess I know you're not supposed to say the term detransition, right? But don't identify as being trans later on, right? And that is very, very different than trans adult people who start identifying, I guess, as trans when they're adult, and like and as a whole almost never
something that is factual. This is not wrong. This is actually true. But what you don't hear is what it is. It's that 60 to 80% of people under 18 who identify with some form of like gender questioning. So like, yeah, exactly. Who at all question their gender. 60 to 80%.
So it's not someone that's actually trans. It's just gender questioning, which is probably most girls in a patriarchal society.
But what you will hear, though, is that this study represents people with gender dysphoria or any myriad of completely wrong claims.
That's a great example of how a study can be correct, but it's just misunderstood, right?
Yeah,
super common with trans issues. I don't even necessarily think it's misunderstood. It's deliberately misrepresented to lead people to a conclusion, because the people who are deliberately doing this do not like trans people and would prefer a world where we don't exist.
Right. Yeah, I also wanted to address, like, Eris, you pointed out, like, oh, well, there's like lots of questions on these studies. There's actually not. So the conclusion of like puberty blockers having good outcomes is very, 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 very well supported medically. There's very few studies that confound that result. There's a few studies that say basically, we should take a closer look at this just because we don't have like long-term data because we have long-term data on puberty blockers in people who are not trans. We don't have studies of long-term effects of puberty blockers and cross-sex hormones. We don't have that combined. Yeah, but the results that we do have, I have 3 studies and I'll link them to you. I'll put them in the group chat if you guys don't mind because I probably can't post them in Prime's chat because I'll probably get him in trouble. The studies that I do have, they all show that puberty blockers are very, very positive for trans people that have them during childhood and go on. There's really not a negative side effect here. And there's the percentage of people who go on something like puberty blockers or hormones. The percentage of people that do that and then actually detransition, that say, this wasn't right for me, it's something like 2%. Of trans people. Like not of the people who are gender questioning. It's trans people. It's about 2%. And Empress is raising her hand, but I will cite that one for you.
Well, I wish
the question I actually had on that one was my understanding was that 2% also includes people who end treatment for reasons other than individual choice. Right. So so it's important for people in the audience to remember that as well. This also includes people who do it for any reason, be that financial, be that personal, be that external support, like any number of reasons.
Social, just like getting made fun of at school. Yeah. I got called slurs when I started transitioning. Like if I were in a less safe place, I would have maybe not continued. Sorry, Eris.
So River, something that you mentioned, it totally makes sense what you were saying about that I misunderstood was the wrong thing because I was thinking of myself and I was thinking of a lot of people who just hear these stats and just see that it's confirmed in the research. Most people don't look through the details or even have the education to be able to understand, the levels of how this happens, right? So I agree with you that probably the way it first gets used is for that reason, is to be intentional. But there is a side effect of tons of well-meaning people who want to be good and they want to be trans allies. They just want the correct information. So when they're being told something and they're told it's a real stat, and it's being misconstrued in a way and they don't realize that, right? I think it's important to not just immediately call those people TERFs or transphobic and just educate them the way we just did in this panel.
For sure. But this is, I'm just pointing out that often that misrepresentation does come from people who have a very pointed agenda against trans people. And there are a lot, and those people deliberately co-opt well-meaning individuals into their movement and try and radicalize them into TERFs.
Because they never say I hate trans people, right? They'll say I love trans people. I just care about them. Okay, I just want them to be okay. They'll always use that kind of terminology.
I love men. I love women. And the unsaid implication is real men, real women. I just want men to be men and women to be women.
Don't we mean Wimixon?
Yeah, Wimixon. But so this is why it's really important, I think, because on some issues, institutions lag behind the times. Specifically on trans issues, a lot of medical institutions that have a long degree of venerability or prestige should be listened to. Because the American Academy of Pediatrics endorses trans healthcare for youths, or American College of Osteopathic Pediatricians, it encourages trans youth to get the treatment that they need. We have study after study after study, even when it comes to adults, that show that long-term support and long-term treatment has overwhelmingly positive effects both on mental and physical health. We have a meta-analysis of 52 I forget how many, 56 studies. And of those 56 studies, 52 of them indicated that transitioning has a positive effect on the mental health of transgender people, and 4 indicated mixed results or no results. But none of them indicated that there were negative effects for transitioning. And I think that with all of this data on like adult trans people and the data that we have on trans youth, the evidence is pretty like startlingly overwhelming when you actually start looking into the research and the data. And there will be a couple like common studies thrown out by TERFs, and basically if you look into any of them, they're built on like the flimsiest of research or just completely wrong readings of the data. And so just you got to be on the lookout for those.
I don't actually think the majority of people are like change their minds based on studies anyways. We all like to think that we do, but I'm sure there's a rare person here who's like reason over
like,
thing.
That's why we need to on the panel be able to bring these up if we're trying to convince especially the well-meaning people out there, you know?
Yeah, no, I totally agree. What I was saying was that, like, I think, I mean, I like to always think that I'm super rational and I love studies, but the truth is one of the big moments for me when it hit me was when I was speaking with someone that was trans and they just told me when they were just talking to me and telling me about that feeling that they got, that euphoria, when they started to not completely hate themselves, right?
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes just those stories, even though they're anecdotes, human beings are social creatures. And it's why, like, I just wish there were more stories like out there and more representation, because I think that that's one of the biggest ways to change people's minds. It sounds corny, but you got to change their hearts. Right?
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty great to not want to rip off your skin.
Yeah, sorry to
It is pretty great.
intrude on you guys, but I just wanted to say a couple things about being an ally when it comes to these subjects. So like as I mentioned before, when it comes to these studies, I'm very I'm not even like ill-informed, but just like I'm not gonna lie, I'm kind of a three-head sometimes, and so which is why
I can't believe you just said that. That made my night.
I mean, not gonna lie, but that's why I just trust the science doctors. But coming from the perspective as a fellow ally who's not quite as informed on these subjects as always, I think one of the important things about being an ally is just to trust the people who you have decided to side with. If you have decided to side with the trans community and they're telling you, hey, we think this idea is poggers, just trust them. And also, a good way that I think makes it easy is that we should never intrude on anyone's right to choose, as long as that choice isn't effectively hurting them in a long-standing way. So it's even if the statistic that 80 or 60% of the people who identify as trans as they were young and then I'm sorry if switch is offensive, but decided to not be trans when they were older, that still shouldn't matter, because that person still has that choice, right? So even if most people decided to switch later, it's still important that they have that choice. So even if you even if it seems, if TERFs come out with all these different statistics, they're most of them regret it later. It does this, it does that. I mean, that doesn't detract. That should we just not let them choose at all? Then what about the people who do it and are very happy with it? So even if all these numbers seem stacked up, the choice is what's really truly important there. It's even if most people decide to switch later, it's still important that they have the choice to switch or be trans. So,
well, in regards to choice, let me tell you about a book called Manufacturing Consent by the great Noam Chomsky.
God.
I'm kidding. Sorry.
Well, yeah.
I was going to be one of those kinds of panels. Okay, Eris.
But I'm off my soapbox. I just wanted to say how I like to think about things.
Thank you.
Hey, Prime. I just want to ask before I do this. So I'm linking studies, a lot of studies, on this stuff, just for people on this panel who've expressed oh, I don't know a lot about this. So all these studies I'm linking are good pieces of information. They're well supported. Some of them have,
thank you.
There's a good mix of sample size and stuff. But you'll notice they're all from a certain website. I'm not quite sure whether I can post them in your chat. I would, If I can.
Why wouldn't you be able to?
Sci-Hub, if you're familiar
What are
with
they
it.
from, like Stormfront or something?
Yeah,
No, they're from
No.
Sci-Hub.
No. It's Sci-Hub, which is effectively it removes barriers in the way of science.
Oh, I see.
It'll let you
Ah.
give you access to some
So it steals
study.
hard work from scholars. I see.
It doesn't.
Hmm.
Scholars don't make
Interesting.
money off of their papers being listed places generally. It's the
A lot of-
publisher that does.
No,
a
I
lot of
know.
these are posted
I
by
know
the people
you
who write
know.
these studies.
Just put it in the Discord. Put it in the VC chat.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, I'll do that.
And if anyone else wants to see what the thing she's talking about, just come to the VC chat, and within Discord channels, you'll find the studies listed there. All right.
Definitely check those out.
Yeah. But thank you for asking. Appreciate it, Alice. All right. Okay. So, anyone else's Maddie or Tina? Do you have any thoughts, particularly on this?
Just I'm learning a lot tonight. I didn't know that hormone blockers were taken by cis people. I'm just learning a lot tonight, and I'm taking it all in.
Yeah, like
A lot of the treatments used in trans people were originally developed for cis people.
Yeah,
Mhm.
like there are conditions like precocious puberty, where like puberty starts in like a 8-year-old, 9-year-old, 10-year-old, and for like health reasons because they need the kid's body to grow more before they undergo puberty, like they use hormone blockers. So there is also a possibility here where like banning hormones for like trans people could also ban hormones or hormone blockers for cisgender people too, who
Mhm.
do need those for valid medical reasons, same as trans folk. We need them too.
Yeah, no, I just like to echo that sentiment. I've been learning a lot. I also think, when looking back on the question that was posed, whether it's okay or fair to have 16 as the cutoff, I mean, it seems absurd that they would make someone who's struggling with their gender identity to wait until they were 16. And in most cases, I mean, I think about myself, I went through puberty, like I was pretty much done with it by the time I was 12. So it just seems ultimately harmful to force kids to wait, especially when something like a hormone blocker is just delaying the process until that person has a chance to fully work through their feelings on it and what their identity is, because I can imagine that's a really complicated process and question to ask yourself.
Literally, the purpose of hormone blockers is to allow the child to make an informed decision. So,
Yep.
like,
Yeah,
if
to
the
me
entire
seems like a
conversation is
no-brainer.
about making sure that kids are informed, that's what the hormone blockers
Okay, what
are
about
for.
actual hormones, right?
Yeah.
Because I mean, I took hormones when I was a teenager, and I guess I'm cis. So, and that worked out well for me. So, like, what about actual hormones?
You took.
Or am I
you
breaking
took-
the rules of the panel? I don't know.
You took the same hormones that your body would have produced. You didn't take testosterone. You
Yeah.
didn't take cross-sex hormones. So the effect of cross-sex hormones is a little different than the hormones your body would have produced. Not that it's, yes, to some extent, the effects that that are going to happen from the hormones of the opposite sex are going to be what you expect. Testosterone is going to cause masculinization.
Wait, J.K. Rowling told me that trans people say that sex isn't real, though. I don't
First off,
understand.
we don't
Only me.
do that, and actually, people should tune in tomorrow because I think we're having a discussion about gender abolition, and I feel like we're going to come up to that topic. Anyway, but basically, like, so the effects of estrogen on you are not really very helpful in the study of like people who are trans. It doesn't help, like, because it's cross-sex hormones. But yeah, I mean, like, estrogen, its effects are pretty well known on what's going to happen. We know that there's some things, like if you take estrogen orally, it's going to do the same thing that birth control pills do to some extent, or it's going to increase your stroke risk, slightly. There's other things that's going to do. Testosterone has similar types of risks. Actually, I don't remember testosterone risks offhand, but testosterone has risks too. And you have to be aware of those risks, and that's part of the process of consenting to hormone treatments and working with a doctor, etc., to get these things sorted, because there are risks. It's just that the risks are really minor when we're talking about somebody who is trans and is going on cross-sex hormones to better be able to feel comfortable with their body. Like cross-sex hormones were like life-changing for me, and it went from like me not wanting to be alive to me like functioning very, very well now. So it's like a very big thing. Like, yeah, there's side effects, and we know the side effects, and we know that there are risks, but the risks are so tiny that they outweigh, or the benefit outweighs any risk that there really can be.
Yeah. So to kind of add on to that a little bit, basically a research project was undertaken in 2012 that basically found that parental support reduces suicidality the likelihood of a suicide attempt within the past year in trans youth from 57% to 4%.
Massive.
That's huge.
Wow.
Like,
Yeah.
holy shit.
So it's
Wow.
like, you also have to ask yourself then, what does it mean to have strong parental support? I think that includes allowing your kid to get the medical care that they need. Look, do you want your kid to like have a 50+% chance of trying to kill themselves within the past year? No. Well, then you should allow them to get hormone blockers. You should get them a gender therapist, and you should allow them to take hormone replacement therapy when the doctors suggest that it's time for that. It's really straightforward to me,
Yeah, and I think, and I don't know if anyone else who has utilized hormones on the panel will agree or disagree with this, but I can speak to my own experience, and I can speak to what I've been told by some other trans people. I've spoken about this on the panel before. When I started hormones, and I think there's a common misconception that hormones are just about physical changes. They are not. Obviously, there are some physical changes that come along with hormones, but in no small part for me, and many others do describe this as well, even within the first few weeks, I found that there was a significant mental change. It felt like my body was getting software errors when interacting with my brain before that just kind of got alleviated. I felt like I was more able to express my emotions. I felt like I was this is obviously highly, highly anecdotal, and there does need to be more research into this. But yes, highly. But this is also something that's very widely reported as an anecdotal experience. So
but people don't know themselves. There's no
people are
effects
also
from hormones. Like, there's no known mental effects. Like, you know what I mean? Like, it's not like hormone. Anyway, I've heard from a lot of trans people who say the same types of things, but I think you can't outweigh the benefits of like being able to be yourself. Like, if you're going on hormones,
110%.
You're gonna start looking more like what you want to look like. There's things that are going to be changing for you. Like, you're gonna be presenting differently. Maybe if you're starting hormones, there's like things that are gonna correlate to that. So I think that those things help a lot too.
But you're also in a situation where you're now having statistically significant likelihood of having hormones that are closer to that which you are neurologically developed for. Arguably, this is getting into really, really speculatory territory about the nature of gender. So
here's something for you. I currently have missed enough doses of estrogen that my testosterone levels should be about normative, which for me is relatively low. Like, so about half of what like male testosterone levels are, and my estrogen should be relatively low, around double what most males' estrogen levels. The point is, my hormone levels are fucked right now, to the point where my testosterone is essentially male normative, and my estrogen essentially is male normative. And my mental state is fantastic right now. It didn't change when that hormone change happened. And I don't expect it to change when I again start estrogen. I don't expect any changes. I've done that a few times. I don't think it's going to change, but I'll let you know. Maybe my mood will improve.
We'll see. Human experimentation live on Twitch for all of y'all.
Doesn't estrogen make your skin like way better though?
Oh yeah, 100%.
How do we know that people are just like looking at how amazing their skin looks, and they're like, wow, and that's just affecting their mental health as well.
I mean, I
feel like that's what I would care about.
There are some people who take I take a hormone blocker called spironolactone. Women take that too for acne.
Yeah, I was gonna say, like not all hormone, like female hormones help your skin. That's why, like before your period, sometimes your skin will just be like, oh, hey. And
Don't remind me,
best.
please.
Yeah.
It's wild why that happens. Your testosterone levels are increasing. So that's why your skin
bullshit.
worsens.
Oh, that makes me hate testosterone so much. I hate a dick.
That's what
Well
that's
done.
what
Welcome to
Testosterone.
resistance, Maddie.
there's an interesting one. Progesterone also changes, and your progesterone levels spike too. So progesterone is something that a lot of like trans people take now, like a lot of trans women, I should say, take progesterone, and that can also help with mood. Yeah, yeah. So you've got, is that Spyro? Looks like.
This is progesterone.
Okay.
Oh, it's progesterone. There you go.
So it looks like the patriarchy strikes
go.
again. Testosterone. Screwing women. When will it ever end? When will women catch a
Right.
break?
Listen, not everyone can
Get
be
out
as
of here,
high T as you,
testosterone.
Prime. Okay.
Okay, here's a question. Wait, if everyone just starts taking estrogen, like no matter what, right? Do you think that like violence would be destroyed? Interesting
No,
question.
because I'm not an essentialist. So no, violence
Look.
wouldn't change very much.
Look, violence
No,
wouldn't
it's
change
like-
very much, but I am still kind of on board with the idea of Biden's
Yeah.
first fem camps. Okay.
Yeah, forced femming men is a
Thank
good
you,
idea.
Jack.
Yeah.
Thank
Right.
you, Jack.
We've all
There,
seen
there's
that.
there's
Someone
one
had
guy
to
in the
say
audience right now who is like, I fucking knew it.
Actually, just put them in cages instead, okay? Put them
Oh
all
my
in
God.
cages instead.
Oh my
Yeah.
god.
Well, okay, when I don't take my
I have it coming.
antidepressants, I have when I don't take my antidepressants, I have like this thing that happens. I guess I go through withdrawal and I start getting really irritable and start becoming like really angry. And I have this feeling in my chest. And I was describing this to one of my friends, right? One of my male friends. I'm saying like this feeling in my chest, like I just want to, and I don't know why I feel this way and I hate it, right? And it's like really stressful. And then he was like, well, that's what it's like being a man.
What?
Yeah,
I'm like,
testosterone
wow.
does that.
Ooh.
Wait a minute.
I will say,
A feeling in your chest to what? What? Do what? Just attack people? Like what?
no
I
anger.
guess I don't know. It's just like you just want to like I don't want to say it.
It's not
Just
wanna
like
get
chop
you-
wood.
You just wanna fuck?
Yeah, I don't
Like-
know.
Or go outside and grill some hamburgers.
I just want to
I-
like pop bubble paper, you know?
I will
like,
say,
I don't know.
I will say, the sex drive changes of like transitioning
Yes.
are wild.
Yes,
Oh,
I will
can
agree.
I hear
Oh,
about
yeah.
that? I'm so interested in that.
Yeah.
Dropping testosterone drops your sex drive, relatively speaking, and yeah, that is absolutely something that happens. There's like, and the vice versa is true. Increasing testosterone can spike some people's sex drives. It's not literally 1-to-1 correlation, but like, so trans men who go on testosterone are gonna have an interesting time. And yeah, for a lot of trans women whose testosterone levels drop significantly, it's a big change. It's a big change in how sex works for you. So it is definitely interesting.
Well,
how
and
that works.
it rewires your brain to a certain extent to like the sensation of sex is just different. Like the experience
Yeah.
of sex is different.
That's
Which
wild.
I find like extremely fascinating, just like intellectually.
Well,
I'm
like
still
my
relearning that one.
my only interaction with any sort of hormones was like when I was briefly on a hormone birth control, and I ended up having to stop because I no longer felt like I was in control of my own emotions. And because it was that severe. And so I ended up just getting like copper wire IUD, which has been legit. But like that gives me like such an appreciation though for how transformative and impactful like even the most like minor hormones can be. And because it is massive. I mean, and I think when I was taking that birth control, I had like conversations with my mom at the time where I'm like, I feel like I'm losing my mind. And I am like so sad immediately and then fine. And then like very angry. And I don't know, like I have no rationale for why that's happening.
Mhm.
So I find the whole thing super fascinating.
Yeah. Well, like it is really weird to realize that like our brains run on chemicals and electricity and like it's a wild west in there and we don't really fully understand it, and anyone who claims that they fully understand brain science is lying to you.
Yeah.
I interviewed a neuroscientist not long ago on my stream and he was like, yeah, it's basically the equivalent of like, you know, doing surgery in the Stone Age when we're talking about brains. Like there was a study that came out about like trans brains a while ago that was like, there's evidence that like, you know, your brain is wired to be trans. And like I asked him specifically about that, and he was talking about how we can't really draw any super good conclusions about studies like that, and we should be skeptical of any studies that come out like that, because generally what's going on is they take MRI images, and when we're talking about like mapping how the brain works, MRIs have like a resolution nowhere near enough for us to like make a conclusive claim. It's like looking at a picture of like that fuzzy black and white picture of like the Loch Ness monster and going like, oh yes, this is 100% a real dinosaur. Real dinosaurs exist all over the world, and like we need better resolution. We need better like research and data. And
I'm so happy you mentioned that, because people always mention those studies about like, oh yes, this proves it. But those studies are absolutely grossly they're not meant to be used to draw that type of conclusion. They don't draw that type of conclusion. They basically say, yeah, this part of the brain structure is a little bit different in these populations. That could have multiple reasons. They don't even draw a conclusion. They don't draw a strong conclusion. So I hate it so much when people use those types of studies. Like, no, we don't have studies of brain sex. We have studies that show that in MRI images, one portion of some people's brains is slightly different. And it's not even it's not even something that's a very large effect.
My mom has worked in a neuropsychology clinic. She's a psychologist by training. And like, she'll tell you, she's like, yeah, we kind of know like a little bit about how the brain functions, but like mostly not at all. So yeah.
Long story short,
I mean,
Elon Musk.
This is very anecdotal, admittedly. But when I was younger, I had a lot of MRIs on my brain, and they never made any comments about that being a femoid brain. So, like, I don't know. You know, if it's so obvious, you'd think like 4 or 5 different MRIs of my brain, they would have noticed something. I don't know. I don't buy it.
And yeah, anyone who's had to go on like SSRIs or any sort of like anti-anxiety or depression medication can tell you like, oh yeah, our brain is it's just chemicals. Like it can make a massive difference. And I say that from experience. Yeah. Oh, right on. There you go. Yeah, I'm team Lexapro over here.
Nice. Same.
So, yeah.
Now, Zoloft is so much better, guys. Like, what the fuck?
Okay. All right. So, thanks for that. All of that. No, it's fine. We just kind of went off the rails there. No, it's perfect. Perfect panel for this particular channel. So if you guys want to have like a final statement on this and then move on to the next topic, just raise your hand if you want one. You don't have to do one. Okay. We'll go to Empress first, then Jack.
Trans rights.
Nailed it. All right. Moving on. No, you did. And Riverwood Jack.
Do you want less children killing themselves or being harmed? Then you should be in favor of hormone blockers and hormone replacement therapy and supporting trans healthcare in general.
Okay. All right. Thanks. All right, so moving on.
Wait, I have a final statement.
Oh boy. There we go.
Why are you guys so afraid? Okay. Okay. So I guess my final statement is, well, yeah, I learned a lot in this particular discussion. Made a lot of friends, right? But I'm about to make some enemies, right? But I do think in general that like this talking point, I guess, is just I don't like I correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't think it should be the priority of the trans community when it comes to actually pushing policy. I feel like it's something that often really gets used against the trans community and gets used as the argument against trans rights. And when you're in a situation like in the United States where literally like it's not even legal for adults to be given this stuff, like to be given like the hormones that they need to survive, then I just feel like the priorities should be focused on that. And yeah, just because for optic reasons.
I
Then
need to
after.
respond. I need to respond to that real quick because, like, frankly, it's not a choice for trans people whether we want to focus on it or not, because cis people make it something we have to focus on. Like, Arkansas
That's fair.
literally outlawed giving trans youth the health care that they need. So, like, and also grown adult trans people too. It's no longer covered under insurance in Arkansas. So, like, yeah, we need to focus on this stuff, because if we don't secure those rights, they get taken from us. And frankly, we need those rights in order to be able to live, full stop.
Yeah, and if we don't help the children, there won't be any activists that grow up as adults to fight for these rights either.
And we will
Bingo.
lose yet another generation of LGBTQ individuals to the government actively trying to prevent us from existing. This is not the first time the government has done this. You should be keeping a very close eye on what they're doing right now, because they're trying to kill us again.
I do want
worst.
one last thing to point out. This is why we should be very skeptical of conservatism and fascism ever, or even nationalism ever being a valid pathway forward, because generally marginalized groups like trans people become the first targets for such groups. Remember that the pictures of the books being burned in Nazi Germany, those books were research about trans people. Those books were being burned outside of the Institute of Sexology. And that's why trans people seem like a new concept now. It's because all of the existing medical research on us was burned by the Nazis, and then we got sent to the camps. So we need to secure our rights, full stop.
Interesting. I actually, when I had my interview with Demon Mom on my stream last week, we talked about this very issue about like how connected, particularly Jews and the Jewish experience and the trans experience is so similar, especially with people thinking that you are privileged, particularly if you're in the closet or not presenting as being trans outside when you're not, right? Like, so that's, yeah, interesting discussion.
Okay. All right. So I guess we'll move on to the next one. Topic 2. The Supreme Court on Monday agreed to hear an appeal from Kentucky's Attorney General, who was seeking to defend a restriction on abortion rights that lower courts had struck down. The underlying issue in the case to be heard in the fall is a block Kentucky law that abortion rights supporters say would have effectively banned a standard abortion method in the second trimester of pregnancy. Do you feel that states should be able to sidestep federal rulings? Is abortion a states' rights issue? Do you feel the current lineup of the Supreme Court will buckle and given to the state's Attorney General? Do you think other states would try to ban abortion practices and services? What precedent would this set moving forward with women's bodily autonomy? Eris.
I'm just so shocked it's still an issue for you guys. Like, I don't know. I feel like I'm like looking like 10 years ahead, like in Canada. When did we decriminalize abortion? It's not technically, it's not, and it's on a national basis. It's not considered a government issue. It's not considered a criminal issue. It's considered a medical ethics issue. So it's handled privately with doctors and their patients. And yeah, I don't know. It's that's one of the big reasons why I would just never move to the United States. Like, it feels like you guys are living in some weird like sci-fi fantasies where people are like forcing sterilization like on women. Like, just, yeah, fuck that. That's all I have to say.
Alice?
Whoops! I muted myself again. Yeah, I definitely don't understand. Yeah, you know me. I have 3 people looking at me. I definitely don't understand why this is still even a question. It's America, like we like how do you say that? Like Koto. Anyway, we like listen to like these religious like people about this type of issue, and this is fundamentally like you know, like you said, Eris, a medical issue, right? A question of like, you know, you want an abortion and you want like that's between you and your doctor. That's not between you, your doctor, and a group of white men sitting in like government offices somewhere. So I just don't understand why it's even still an issue at all. the like lineup, this question asks about like whether the lineup of the Supreme Court's going to buckle and give in. Yeah, absolutely, it's going to give in because, in general right now, I think we have a pretty conservative Supreme Court. And I have a feeling that we're going to see some side effects of that conservative Supreme Court. That's probably going to have something to do with this. Other states will try to ban, abortion practices. Absolutely, it will happen. It's going to continue happening. And this type of decision just absolutely destroys like women's bodily autonomy entirely. Like, this is not a question of some lawmakers sitting in their offices and making laws they don't understand. That's what's happening here. That's not what this should be. This should be between a woman and her doctor. It doesn't make sense to bring the government into this issue.
Maddie.
Yeah, this was why, I had a really tough time when I found out that Ruth Bader Ginsburg had passed away, because I knew that abortion was going to be on the docket at some point in the near future, as soon as they confirmed the next Supreme Court justice. This is one of those, one of these things that for many conservatives, this is their single issue that they care about, that like directs their voting. And it's, I guess you could pretend to say, oh, it's because they believe in a child to have, live and not be killed. But we know that's not true, because they will vote down everything else that would help children thrive and survive, and especially poor children, especially children who are Black and brown. Especially trans children. Exactly. So children that aren't lily white, good Christian, fearing football players. So it scares me, truly. Because I think it's, when you look at the trends nationwide of public opinion, you see that more people support abortion now than at any other point in our history. And yet it's still under fire. And at some point, you just have to ask yourself, like, when can we just fucking shut it down and let them know that, like, this isn't up for debate. This isn't something we're going to be regressive on. But it's really going to come down to how people vote, making sure that we don't suppress the vote, because that's when you see any meaningful law. Like, the only reason we have a chance to pass meaningful laws now to protect abortion is because we have a razor thin majority in Congress. And even then, it likely will be filibustered. So I think, I don't know, I am worried for the future of abortion in this country. And everyone should have an abortion whenever they want, for any reason, for free.
Okay. All right. What about Jack?
All right. Frankly, I don't think abortion is a states' rights issue. It's a people with wombs issue. And they should be the ones who get a final say over what is allowed inside of their womb. Now, do I feel like the current lineup of the Supreme Court is going to buckle? That implies that they, in some way, want to resist this ruling. I don't think I think the current makeup of the Supreme Court is actually pretty pro life, pretty anti-abortion. So if this is allowed through, other states will 100% be following. And I don't think it's going to stop there. They're also going to try and ban literally every single other abortion procedure as well. Okay. And frankly, here's my hot take. Abortion is good. Okay. Abortion is good. Frankly, you can't be forced to be hooked up to somebody, in a hospital to save their life. You can be like, nope, I don't care if they're going to die. I don't want to be hooked up to that person. That's how far your bodily autonomy goes. You can let a full-grown adult die. And it's not your fault because you didn't put your body at their disposal. And frankly, I see this as an even lesser version of that. So is it a great outcome? Maybe not, but it's a good outcome for the person who doesn't want their body to be used in that way. So
Empress.
Oh, you're muted, girl.
Oh.
Professional streamer.
Every time. See, this is what I get for saying pro streamer. I gotta do it every time. No, I mean, like it's very clear what's going on here, right? They're absolutely abusing the unscientific ruling that was Roe v. Wade, right? Roe v. Wade literally created the trimester understanding of pregnancy. Right? This is
Really?
where that idea of understanding pregnancy primarily comes from in terms of popular understandings of pregnancy. And it's mostly arbitrary, with the exception of 24-week fetal viability. So it seems like, based on the jurisprudence in my reading of this case is probably going to be ruled in favor of Kentucky. Why? Because Roe v. Wade set it up such that in instances of second trimester abortions, there may be some interest of the state, and it doesn't seem like they're fully banning them. So this looks like this actually has a very high potential of going through the court and succeeding. So the question then becomes, can the federal government legislate on this? I happen to think yes, but we don't know, because the federal government hasn't really attempted much in the way of legislation on actual abortions, and seems to just kind of be pussyfooting around the issue. And like I said at the beginning, I don't have a womb, right? So you might think that this issue doesn't affect me. But it does, because I get my HRT at Planned Parenthood, right? So this is one of those issues that ends up kind of becoming a catch-all for pushing on conservative ideals, right? It's not just about the abortion. It's never just about the abortion. They want the clinics closed. They want all funding taken away from it. Why? Why wouldn't they just leave it up to the free market, or possibly have this be a states' rights issue? They won't do this because they know how many other issues that are hot buttons for them are attached to it, like HRT, like sexual education, like the ability to use preventative measures for pregnancy, like the ability to use birth control, like the ability to use Plan B, which I don't think is fair to compare to things like abortion. Like a second trimester abortion, which is being legislated on here. They know that they want to take all of these things away from you, and they are actively attacking the funding sources for it. They're actively attacking every single possible piece of legislation they can get to shut these places down, and it has worked, right? They have been extremely, extremely successful, except so far in the courts. And now it's looking like they're lined up to have a fucking grand slam. We need to legislate on this now. This needs to be a big issue for Democrats, because if you don't do something about it, one, you're losing the suburban women vote, right? Two, right, you're having a massive, massive impact on the general population as a whole and quality of life. This is not just an issue of life versus choice. This is an issue of many, many, many things coming to a head at one singular point. And I think it's really important to remember that when we're talking about abortion cases. That's all I got to say. Lyra's based.
All right. So I pretty much agree with what everyone said. You know, abortion is not murder. It's good. Okay, pretty pog if you ask me. It's like you're weighing one life against many, because women who get like abortions, I mean, for whatever reasons, but like think about like even if some, like a lot of people like to say, well, don't get an abortion because you can just put your child into foster care. Even the foster care systems in this country is terrible. It's like they could go through so much abuse. So you could be putting this child, giving them an even worse life rather than just cutting off early. People can go into poverty. Like so many lives can be ruined just by forcing women to carry to term. So 100%, abortion should be a right. I don't think this is a states' right issue, because it's an ethical issue. Like this is women's rights. Like what? Human rights shouldn't be like on the table for states to pick and choose which they want to like decide on. So I agree with all that. But as I like to do, when I read this question, I like to overthink things. So when I read this question, I started like focusing more on the should state courts be able to sidestep federal rulings part. And like my answer to that, I was very torn on it, because like obviously I'm biased. Abortion should be a right. It's not murder. But then again, it's like precedent that we have to worry. The magic word is precedent. Like if I hear about for the state, abortion is illegal, but then a court just sidestepped it. It was just like, go on ahead. I'd be like, yes, because I'm biased. But like that sets a very bad precedent, right? Because then if abortion becomes like, you know, federal, like, okay, abortion is a right everywhere, and like these lower courts are still sidestepping that, it's bad then. So like I guess my opinion on that matter would be it's best to keep up the precedent and just fight for the right for abortion to make it legal everywhere.
Tina.
I'm with Eris on this. You know, up here in Canada, it's just it's such an archaic thing that you guys are still discussing, and and it's frustrating for me because while it's important for us to talk about it, I feel like, you know, we should move on from this topic in general because it's already been decided. You know, like, let women decide for our, you know, whoever has a womb, let us decide for ourselves what the fuck we want.
I mean, we gotta talk about it to get the government to agree.
No, that's what I'm saying though. That's the most frustrating part about it though. Like, we have to talk about it, and that's what makes it frustrating because you have no other choice. Even though, you know, I think, you know, Canada has a bit more of a grasp on it than America does, and also this whole like discussion about, like, you know, should it be states' rights? Like, it just seems like such a way to remove the people who are experiencing it from the topic. You know, like, let's just give it up to let the people who give birth decide. You know, like,
or you know what, we can even it out. We can even it out. You know, if the government can meddle in women's bodies, they can meddle in men's bodies. Mandatory vasectomies, okay?
Yeah. No more Viagra. It's unnatural.
Dictate.
If you don't want the tree to grow, if you don't want the tree to grow, kill the seed, right?
Birth control was made for the wrong gender. There you go.
Yeah. So I say this as someone, like, I will say this right now. I have had an abortion.
Hell yeah.
Was it? And yeah. And like, here's the thing. I'm so freaking lucky that at the time I had insurance that covered it and that I could find a place to have that, like, and the clinic where I went to, everyone, it was a Planned Parenthood, and the staff were incredible and supportive. And I think to myself, like, okay, I had all the resources I needed to make that kind of decision. And it was still like shitty. And it isn't for everyone. Because I also hate that talking point where they're like, oh, but, you know, abortion, it's never an easy decision. It's never a thing no one wants to do. It's like, for me, it was like, no, it was really easy. Because as soon as I got that positive pregnancy test, I'm like, oh no, I have to take care of this. But that's a choice that every woman deserves to be able to make herself. Mm-hmm. And it's like, it's insulting when you hear, especially Republican lawmakers talk about how, like, oh, but what they really care about is the sanctity of life. These are the same people that will take away healthcare for underprivileged children if it means that, like, they can say, oh, I cut the budget by X%. They don't give a fuck whether or not kids are going to die because of that. They don't care about trans kids committing suicide because they don't have access to hormone blockers or to puberty blockers. Like, they don't.
Rugged individualism for you, government subsidized healthcare for them, right? Like, because if you're a member of the Senate of the House, if you're a judge, and you, like, or statistically speaking, if you live in a Republican state, you're probably on state subsidized healthcare.
Well, and like, on top of that, like, so I used to work in like nonprofit children's medical for a nonprofit in the children's medical field, I guess. And there are around like 50 million kids in the United States who either have no medical insurance coverage or are underinsured, meaning that if their family tries to take them to a hospital, they aren't going to be like, they don't have full coverage. The family still has to pay money that they don't have. So, like, if you care about kids, there's a lot of real layups to, like, show that you care about kids, and making sure that these kids that are born into families that want them, like, can actually live and thrive and be happy. There are plenty of opportunities out there, and frankly, I don't think stopping people from having abortions
or, like, actually address the pedophilia problem in our country.
I mean, also that, but also like, let's talk about when a woman is actually pregnant. Like, why not guarantee full medical coverage for like prenatal care to ensure, like if you care that that baby is going to be born healthy and is in a position to thrive, why not cover that? I mean, in other countries, that is the case. So I now have a nephew. My younger sister had a baby boy last year. She lives in Germany. Her husband's German. They literally, it was 100% covered. Not only was all the prenatal care covered, but for 2 weeks after she gave birth, she had a lactation specialist that I think was also a doula who would come to her house every day to check to make sure that she if she needed any help with breastfeeding. And that was covered by the state to like ensure that things were, off to a good start, especially because in those first few weeks, like being a new mom is like super scary and a lot. And I just remember hearing about her experience, and they get like a year of maternity leave, and then from the men, I think it's not as much, but it's like 4 months minimum or like 3 months minimum. And I can't believe we don't require that, especially when we have so many politicians espousing this bullshit about, what they really care about are the children, and that, but every life is precious. It's like, if you believe that, then fucking act like it. Like, give those people a chance to thrive.
And we all know why this is. It's because politicians don't have to do anything for the unborn. They don't have to like do anything at all. They just have to say ban abortion. Like it has very little impact on any of their lives. And they don't have to give money to the unborn. They don't have to give tax cuts to or tax the unborn. They don't have to do any of that shit. So it's an issue where they can fluff their feathers all day long in the public spotlight and get headlines and newspaper articles written about them, and they literally don't have to commit to any meaningful improvement to the standard of living to any person in this country.
I think this is just sad. Tinsky in chat says, my wife is pregnant, due on the 7th. Her 1-year anniversary at her job is the 6th. If the baby comes early, she doesn't get any paid time off. We'll both have to take vacation days. So like, it sounds like she doesn't even get PTO because she's not a year on the job if the baby's born before the 7th. That's just fucked up. That's literally criminal. That should not be legal.
Criminal. That's unacceptable. God.
I also want to I want to point out that it's super critical to like also recognize that like all this delegation on like abortion rights is a way to like control women's bodies and anyone who can like bear children, but also two is such a way to keep poor people poor, because it's like abortion, if you make abortion illegal, it's only going to be illegal for poor people. And like I think that also because like rich people, they can just fly to some other country and get it done, but like people. Also this whole like thing about should it be a states' right issue, it's a wishy-washy one, because they're trying to say you just let everyone pick and choose by themselves, but like one of the things they say is like hey, if you want an abortion, go to this other state, but poor people can't do that. We can't just pack up all our shit and go over there to get an abortion and come back. And so it's like,
or even within states, it takes they'll have one clinic within the same state, but it'll take you have to take a day off or 2 days off from work, which makes it
to keep poor people poor. No,
and they do this on purpose. Like they'll tax condoms and Plan B and just everything like that as luxury goods, right? They do these things on purpose. So not only, right, are they using it, to prevent access, right? They're also using it as a fucking revenue stream, right? For whatever policy they want to fund, because this is usually a state tax, and states, bear in mind, right, desperately need funding. It's not like the federal government where they're printing their spending each year. At the state level, taxation actually does matter because it determines how much you can spend, right? So they know full well what they're doing. They're using it to be able to fund the policies that they actually want to fund, and taking it out of the pockets of poor Americans, primarily people of color, right? Like this is like disproportionately affects people of color because as Lyra pointed out, right? you can just easily fly out of the country. And in states, right, that have implemented these kinds of abortion bans. Now, bear in mind, this also tends to correlate with restrictions on other types of birth control, but you actually find that rates of abortion don't necessarily go down, right? Whereas if you implement both access to abortions and contraceptives is super important, abortions go down over time, not up, right? So like if you actually even cared about the issue of abortions, you wouldn't be doing what you're doing. The policy praxis makes no sense, which, like I said, when the policy praxis doesn't make sense, maybe the goal isn't what you think it is.
Aren't
right?
some Republicans
So like there's certainly
even against...
ideologues who are supporting these policies, but I think that it's much more insidious than that. I think it's a very, very clear political motivation and attacking the rights of women, the rights of trans people, the rights of many people, rights of poor people, rights of people of color within our society, so they can bankroll it. Rugged individualism for you, while we pat our coffers, while we pay lower taxes, while we don't have to deal with any of these social issues, and everyone else slowly rots away. Right? Mm-hmm. I think it's just an extension of systemic policy and oppression.
And again, I was kind of memeing when I suggested like all men get vasectomies, but imagine if that policy was pushed forward in a meaningful way.
It would be outraged. It'd be fucking outraged.
It would be like, okay, imagine the Republican response to that. Just for like a millisecond. Imagine if a real politician actually suggested that every man in the United States should have a vasectomy until they're ready to have children. I have
a good middle ground.
How much like
dick cages?
I mean, dick cages. Okay, yeah. The government who has
like
the
a male chastity belt.
You're welcome.
There are people who use them. That is their thing, right? Like I know they are out there.
Government mandated dick cages immediately.
Tina 2 is a shill for the dick cage industry.
Shit.
Wait, but here's the real question. Hang on. I'm all for state mandated dick cages, but who gets the key?
Oh.
Yeah, exactly. Does your local mayor have to have all of the keys?
It's like some gun control laws. You have to get approval for a concealed carry key from your local sheriff.
But like the amount of rage that would be around either of those policies is really like I do not think I can stress when Republicans are losing their shit over like Dr. Seuss books, how much they would maul over people telling them that all of their men have to get vasectomies. And yet
my boyfriend says the local dominatrix gets the key. Drum Boy 7-Eleven in Prime's chat.
I think I should get the key for all of them. Just saying. Just a personal opinion.
But at the same time, they're willing to go and say all women should have to be forced to have children.
It's forced
which
birth.
Is wild. Which is wild.
Not pro-life. It's forced birth.
Yeah,
is what it is.
Are you?
Which, by the way, is fucking dangerous.
Yes.
By the way, I don't know if you guys know this. There's actually a movement, a sub-movement of the pro-life movement, and this is not a joke. This is 100% true. If you go to pro-life protests, you will see this. Larger ones, usually not the smaller ones. You only find it the small ones if you actually talk to people. There is a sub-movement of the abortion movement that it's the never adopt movement or something like that. I'm forgetting the exact name off the top of my head, but basically their stance is not only should you be forced to have a kid, don't put that kid up for adoption, right?
Oh,
and it's like, so wait, not only are you acknowledging the problem of the foster system, you're saying, no, you should be forced to be a stay-at-home wife, barefoot, at home, while 9 months pregnant with the next baby. Like, what the fuck is this attitude?
You're poor enough to not be able to escape.
That's literally Handmaid's Tale shit.
That's literally you stay poor. That's what that
Well,
says.
it's like, well, no, it's not even just stay poor, right? Because statistically, we also know what happens when they restrict the access to birth control. Abortions don't go down; they go up. And people seek out unsafe abortions, and you have an increased rate of marital death
against birth control
death.
Blows me away. The fact that Republicans are against birth control is just astounding.
Oh, you know they're all using it.
I know.
Well, that's like there was a documentary not that long ago where they interviewed. It was like showcasing women who were anti-abortion activists and yet had abortions themselves. Or there was like this one woman where she was accompanying her daughter to get an abortion. Of course, it was all, they preserved their anonymity. But, like, their response is exactly what you would fucking expect, where they're like, "Oh no, but my situation is different. I'm not like some hussy." And it's like, yeah, do you think like and I mean, I asked this question, but I know the answer. I'm like, do you think every woman that like seeks an abortion is just because like, oh, I had sex with so many men? And even if they did, that's none of your fucking business.
Yeah.
So it just like, that's the thing that really pisses me off, is that for so many conservatives, including the men who probably, especially for politicians, I would bet a decent amount of money that a good number of them have paid for their mistresses' abortions. So like,
this for all of y'all, but not for me. I'm different.
Exactly.
Always that way.
Yep.
They will continue having abortions.
I just want to like reframe this in like an almost a more abstract way, just because I think that helps get the point across more. Essentially, Republicans, by taking away the ability for women to get abortions, want to force women to undergo extremely dangerous like either surgical procedures or like, you can call them natural procedures, whatever, that have a high risk of people dying. In fact, like,
especially here,
like in the United States, like mother mortality, or like people die giving birth all the time. And so like this idea that we should, like, women should be forced to like go through deadly procedures, potentially killing themselves when they don't want to be doing that in the first place, along with all of the other physical tolls that pregnancy takes on a body.
It's like all they want from women is to go back to the days where they shut the fuck up and they just bred. Just
100%.
breathe. Shut up and breathe. Literally, that's it.
They're more concerned with punishing you for like having the audacity to have sex, than anything else. And it's like, because it all really, a lot of it, I think, goes back to that idea that like women must be punished, and it's exerting control, but also kind of reflective of our fucking puritanical values, where any sexuality or display of sexuality is bad and immoral, and how dare you? So
if you run down like the logic hole with this, like you can get away with being like, yes, it is moral to strap women to a table for 9 months until they shoot a baby out of their womb, okay? And like that's fucking ludicrous and gross. No.
And like also, it's like you're forcing women to go through such a dangerous process of giving birth. But like also, even if you ban abortion, people are always going to get abortions. They just won't be safe anymore. They're going to go through even more dangerous procedures for the sake of like getting an abortion that won't be legal. So it's like the best you can do is just minimize it. People are always going to get abortions. You could just make them safe. As a government, that should be your job, making sure as many people are safe as possible. So,
yeah, it's like, or you don't have to impose your own bullshit morality, or the people that say like, oh, well, if you have an abortion, you're going to hell. It's like, I'm going to go to hell for so many other reasons.
It's like,
all I want to do is go down a pole and give the devil a lap dance. That's all I want.
That's the dream.
Right. I like to put it to them this way, right? Demon Daddy is not going to punish me with burn play for being naughty, okay? Sky Daddy does not have a problem with it, okay? What he has a problem with is you allowing women to die en masse for a policy that you don't even care about because, like you said earlier, you're getting an abortion for your mistress anyway, right? So like,
also the people who
I
talk
think
about...
not to like put too much of a damper on this discussion, but like I think that does beg a very important question, which is, A, it seems like that there's very clear political motivations here that have nothing to do with the actual issue. B, it seems that this policy will have very clear negative impact. What do we do? What is the political action that we take here? How do we respond from a strategic perspective? Like I said, I think my opinion, someone mentioned filibusters earlier. Fuck your goddamn filibuster. You have a majority. You can rule 20 this shit, right? And get this policy to a vote. If you have the votes. So like what is politically practical right now for Democrats to do to address this? Can they do anything to address this? Because like I said, I think the court is a settled dog.
So wanted to welcome Joe, our one of our amazing co-hosts. Joe, thank you for being here.
I'm sorry I'm always late. It is the middle of the day for me, to be fair, and I do work, so
we were talking about the topic 2 on the abortion subject in terms of the Kentucky law banning abortion a civil abortion procedure, and whether that would change, would make it up to the Supreme Court, and whether it could, set precedents there. So, what are your thoughts?
I think, well, I mean, obviously, I don't know an astronomical amount about American laws, right? But one thing I would say certainly is, just listening to the discussion that was happening then, I think one of the weaknesses when it comes to the left pushing for abortion rights is how easily we cede moral ground in terms of like making this, when we say things like, oh, it's just a procedure, it's a simple procedure, it doesn't matter, there's no moral implications, like I just take a pill, it's not a big deal. And the more we say it's not a big deal, like that actually makes it really difficult for women to talk honestly about their experiences with abortion as well, because for a lot of women it is a big deal. For a lot of women there are moral considerations that they can't voice, because abortion is so precarious that even if we even admit that maybe there was a moment where we doubted whether it was morally okay, that is ceding ground to the right. So we don't even have the space for moral complexity when it comes to abortion, because it is such a precarious issue for us. We have no space for complexity or nuance, even though the reality is most women who have an abortion aren't thinking, oh, it's no big deal, it's just a little thing, I don't even care. That's just not, it's not honest to say that, because it's not the reality for most women going through this. I think it is terrifying that it's going up to the Supreme Court, because if my knowledge is correct on abortion law in the United States, there are some contradictions in previous Supreme Court findings. So, for instance, I think it's one set of case law talks about viability, then there's a change in terms of trimesters. And I think what always makes me nervous about decriminalization is it's really the first step when it comes to abortion law. Like when it comes to states' control over abortion, because I know this is true of my country as well, abortion laws change state to state. And if you make it illegal in one state, or you make it extremely difficult, you're then adding the complexity of traveling for this procedure, because we obviously know women don't stop getting abortions just because it's not available to them in their state. They just have to take other measures. So if you're having something where a surgical abortion is something that is necessary for some people, if a medical abortion is not an option because it is a later stage abortion. So you already have the incredible cost of having to get a surgical abortion, now paired with travel costs, paired with accommodation costs, paired with doctor costs. What you're basically doing is saying a big fuck you to poor women who can't afford to take time off work, who can't afford to travel, who can't afford to get accommodation. And many women who get abortions already have children. So you also need to find a way to get childcare for that time that you're away. So I think decriminalization is a starting point, and the fact that we can't even get that is so terrifying. And I'm concerned about how precarious previous findings on abortion have been, and complexities in terms of the mismatch of existing abortion policy at a Supreme Court level. Yeah, and I think that the morality thing is something that is unfortunate, because I think there is a moral aspect regardless of where you fall on the political spectrum, and I think it's a weakness in the left's push when it comes to abortion.
I'm just gonna look. I unironically think abortion is good, okay, and I think it's good because bodily autonomy is good, and I think that if you open up the argument to allowing for bodily autonomy for women to be violated, when it comes to forcing them to be pregnant, forcing them to carry a baby to term, I think that is incredibly bad and incredibly twisted and incredibly evil, frankly. And so, yeah, I'm not going to cede a single inch. Abortion is good. Now, it might not make people feel good, but in and of itself, it is good. It is good for people to have access when they need it. The same way, like, having gangrene in your leg is not great, but it's good to have the ability to get that gangrene removed, even if the surgery is, not considered like great, because you have to get part of your leg removed.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with it on an aggregated, impersonal sort of utilitarian way. Of course, abortion is good. Of course, people should have bodily autonomy. But there's a beautiful poem by Gwendolyn Brooks called The Mother, where she talks about her own abortions. And there's a line in it where she says, "In all my deliberateness, I was never deliberate." And she talks to all the babies or fetuses that she did not continue her pregnancies with. And she talks to them about her the fact that she wasn't deliberate in her decision, the fact that it wasn't that clear cut for her, the fact that it is complicated. And what I'm saying is, when we constantly say abortion is just out of the woods good, don't even worry about it, you're disallowing women to have that moral complexity within their own decision.
No,
There's no space for us to do that.
I don't think it disallows women from having that moral complexity. I think that we need to take into account that it is good to have abortion as an option for people who want to have abortion.
Of
and
course.
I think that how people feel about utilizing that option that should exist, that is good to exist, is a very different question from whether or not its existence is good. Is utilizing that option always good? Maybe not, but it should exist for everyone under all circumstances.
I also
so they can
think
exercise their bodily autonomy.
Sorry.
No, it's okay.
I also think the thought process behind saying, "Oh well," trying to diminish the act of abortion is because, like, in America, a lot of conservatives like to always make abortion such what's the word for something that's very filled with like a negative connotation.
Yeah, heavy.
Yeah, it's like a very weaponized. It's a loaded subject. That's what it is. So like when feminists, and not just feminists, well, many people who want their rights are saying, hey, abortion, they're trying to diminish the subject because Republicans and conservatives will always be like, oh, it's religious, it's morally wrong, it's murder, it's ethically wrong. And we're just trying to say, hey, listen, one, it's really good for the population as a whole. And two, it's not all these things. It can be, but to like, it's so up to like a personal person's personal belief systems, and to chalk it up to like, hey, abortion is bad, it is murder, to make it such a loaded term in and of itself. That's what the idea behind diminishing abortion as an act is behind it. It's like trying to say that, like, listen, I know it sounds very loaded, but like, it doesn't have to be. It does not have to be that. But I just think that's what the idea behind it. I mean, we all know that abortion is very hard for women, and like many people choose not to go through with it. And like abortion can be dangerous sometimes too. It definitely takes like at least a huge emotional toll, or can be on women sometimes. I don't think anyone is like contesting that, but like I think the idea behind it is to just make it not quite as loaded and negatively loaded as conservatives try to make it.
Maddie.
Yeah, like, so as, again, someone who has had an abortion, I think what helped is I was ashamed of it for a while, but then I reflected on, well, why did I feel shame about it? And it's like, well, I've never once regretted it. I didn't see it as like, oh, this is, for me, it was not a difficult decision. I was, it was just where it's like, oh, well, this has to be done. And I guess I didn't have the same like moral struggle that maybe some other people do, but what helped me sort of feel confident enough to share it openly and be forthcoming about it, is that like I learned one by one with people in my life just how many other women had had an abortion, and that opened my eyes to like, oh my God, like, why am I wasting energy being ashamed for something that isn't that rare? And that is fine, like, and that I have no reason to be ashamed for it. And I think that for me, I think, was it okay? Lyra?
Yes.
I have a friend whose name is Lyra, and she spells it the same way. So I have to like force myself, Lyra. But like, I totally agree with you, is that I think it's important to, do what we can to remove that negative connotation. And I think there's a way to do it without necessarily diminishing like the seriousness of the procedure or anything else. Because Joe, to your point, like for many women, it's not as easy a choice. But it's, I will say, at least for me, having that shared experience, that's also why I'm open with it, because I hope that if someone's watching and they are like ashamed of their own abortion or whatever, like, don't be.
No person should have to feel ashamed about getting an abortion.
Yeah.
I just want to say this really quick, as Drumboy was quick to point out, correctly so in chat. Not all abortions are from women. Some abortions are from men, trans men. So also non-binary folks can get abortions. Just saying, something that we don't, when we have these kinds of conversations, we tend to focus very heavily on women.
For sure.
Certainly.
But that's not always the case.
No,
Those
definitely
with a
not.
uterus.
Those are the uterus. I want to make it unequivocally clear that just in case I somehow misrepresented myself, I am so for people having access to abortions, and I actively campaign within my country to make abortion not only decriminalized but extremely accessible. So I personally am not putting moral weight on abortions. Lyra, you actually said it really clearly for me. It's not so much that I am saying that abortion is a huge moral thing. I'm saying there is a morality aspect to it, and people on the left never get to engage in that conversation because it's so precarious, we can't afford to cede any ground.
Mm-hmm.
And so women who are actually, just as Maddie, as you said when you were like, oh, once I learned that like other women were having abortions and lots of women around me had abortions, it felt like I felt a weight lifted off my shoulders. What I'm saying is women don't get to have that discussion when they don't feel okay with it morally with other women, because or non-binary folk or whoever is receiving an abortion, they don't get to have that conversation about like, I didn't feel great about this, like I'm worried, I'm upset. There's no space for that conversation to occur because it's such a threatened right that we can't cede any ground. And I think it's really unfortunate that women, if they want to advocate for abortion rights and for bodily autonomy, that there's no space for that conversation about the complexity around the morality of it to occur. And I think, that's all I'm trying to say. It's not that I think it's a huge moral thing. I'm saying there are some women who get it and they're like, I have a friend, I swear, like the way that she views her body is probably the worst nightmare for advertising for sexual health. But there are other women who I know, women who desperately want their children but can't bring them to term, or women who have issues with their own bodies and can't carry their pregnancy through, or late-term abortion. Extremely, I advocate for third trimester abortion because there are women who need to have it, and the moral complexity of women who desperately want a child but cannot bring it into the world because of multiple reasons at the third trimester, who need to receive an abortion, who have a complicated understanding of where that morally stands. There is no space for them to talk about their feelings because of how threatened abortion law is.
Yeah, that's a really good point. And I agree with you on third term abortions. I mean, and it's funny because people will hear someone say third term abortion and they think, oh, someone gets to month 8 and all of a sudden decides, I don't want, like, that's not why anyone gets a third term abortion. In a lot of cases, it's because the pregnancy is no longer viable, but it becomes like, okay, well, do you want to continue carrying something that you know won't survive or will go through significant pain? And you're right, it's a heartbreaking decision, but it's because this is so threatened, that our right to bodily autonomy is so threatened. Having conversations like that or creating spaces to talk about stuff like that is dangerous, because we're terrified enough of just having access taken away.
And just something that I think is interesting on this general topic, there's a really good documentary on the woman who was central to the Roe v. Wade case, who actually ended up going into right-wing spaces because the Democrats decided she wasn't a good role model for what they were trying to do with abortion. She was quite poor. She was bisexual. There were all of these attributes that made her not a good poster child for abortion. And when she felt not okay about what had happened, the right were there with open arms saying, oh, we'll take care of you, we'll support you, we'll talk you through this. So all I'm saying is, like, I think it's someone in the chat put it really well. Nuance is expensive when your rights are on the line. And I 100% agree with that. But I think also the fact that we sort of ceded morality just generally, we were like, okay, you go take the moral high horse on this issue. Although I know we take a more utilitarian stance, it's a very impersonal stance. It's just utilitarianism is the impersonal, distant aggregate is never going to be morally motivating in the same way that you're killing a baby is going to be morally motivating.
That's true.
Maybe I'm just more compelled by utilitarian arguments. Like, to me, you killed a baby, very compelling in an argument. I also think, you essentially want a world where it is ethical to strap women down to tables and force them to give birth. I think that's pretty compelling too. Maybe just to me. I'm not sure.
I agree in the abstract.
I think for me to take their position seriously, where they're like, I just care about, I don't want to kill a baby, and every baby should have the right to live. I'd be like, I would take you more seriously if you also supported creating a society where that child was going to have access to education, housing, good food, healthcare, a lot of things that are required for a human to
have quality
develop
life.
Well. Yeah, exactly. So I believe I'd take you a little more seriously if that was where you were coming from. But if you're not, then I think it's hard for me to not draw the conclusion that your ultimate goal is controlling women's bodies and looking at giving birth as punitive.
Poppers' bodies.
Yeah, versus
But this is true of the right on all things, like freedom of speech. Why don't you give a shit about education then? If you care so much about speech, why don't you give a shit about people being able to talk about what they want to talk about? It's completely false, their pretenses. I'm just saying, if not generally in terms of policy, if you're the woman in the moment, I can see the morality of one side outweighing the whole women should have this right sort of thing. And I'm not saying that's true of all women. I'm just saying, I don't even know what I'm saying. I'm saying there's a moral aspect we don't have access to because the right is too precarious. That's all I'm saying.
I just want to say, it's almost like the right is afraid of people having more information. I wonder what could possibly be going on here.
But at the same time, it's so frustrating because it doesn't even matter how much information you come at them because they've already made up their mind. It's such an emotional response for them that is a child you're killing, quote unquote, to them, no matter what you say, no matter what you do. And there's no way to tap into that. It's purely an emotional drive. Purely an emotional drive.
You're killing your child, but it's okay for them to cut your students' school programs. It's okay for them.
It's okay to sterilize women at the border.
Yeah,
it's fine.
Right.
I want killing babies.
Tina,
it's
Tina
okay
too.
to
They're
black and
the
brown
dirty
minors in jail. That's okay though.
Right.
Yeah, I just think it's feminists went really hard on the abortion is not a big deal in order to counter the religious sort of abortion is murder and women will be damaged from the experience. And that left a huge gap between the actual feelings and the complication of what it is. It's so much easier to drift over to the I must be damaged if some of those feelings are big and too hard to shake off.
So how do you answer counteracting that though? What is your answer then? How do we reach those women or those people who feel like they've made there's complicated feelings and then still maintain our utilitarian strength?
Yeah, I don't know. I guess you guys really can't because you guys are so far behind my country. But I don't think it is nuanced that we can have until there's some sort of uniform right. I'm not bringing it up to criticize or suggest that something is doing wrong. I'm saying it's unfortunate that this is an occurrence and it's something that I think really affects women very badly that isn't often considered.
I mean, what I would almost say to people, at least in my case, it's look, I guess I had an abortion, but because the result of that is I was able to focus on my own career, getting myself to a point where I'm financially stable, where then when I decide to have a family, I can give them the life that they deserve, where they can truly thrive. And that is not something I'd be able to do had I, had a baby at that time. It just simply isn't, that's not reality. And so it's you can paint it however you want, but at the end of the day, when I do eventually have children, whether they're my biological children or whether I adopt, I will give them the life they deserve because I am now in a better position to do so.
It's why force a child to come into a world that is not prepared to take care of them? Or even
I just want to say, financial stability in this economy?
Well, not just women.
Girl, well, yeah.
We have an economy still? Shit.
I've been extremely lucky, but also like everyone else, this year has been a shit show. So cuts have been
Why did something happen?
Oh,
Interesting in the chat, I see like a lot of these arguments could be applied to justify infanticide. I think the big difference is that when we're talking about infanticide, we're talking about literally murdering an independent creature that isn't relying on your body to physically survive. I think that is a big difference. It's a meaningful distinction, actually.
Yeah, it's like the difference is like one is inside your body and entirely dependent on you for sustenance and growing and whatever, and like the other is a whole ass person.
And are you calling
Just,
like a
separate.
2-week-old like thing in your body like an infant? Like what are you calling an infant?
I'm sorry, this is mean, but like, listen, one's a parasite, one's a being. So I mean, the parasite is aggressive, but you know what I'm trying to say. You know?
True.
Right. Or like
I
when
agree.
they say like, oh well, when does life actually begin? When do we consider that a person? It's like, okay, well, let's say it's at 6 weeks or whatever, like when they're like, oh no, when the sperm gets in the egg and then it's a life. It's like, okay, great. Well, if a woman has a miscarriage, are you going to try her for involuntary manslaughter?
100%.
Like, is that what's going to happen? Like, please.
Also, yeah, one of the key things about like a baby that you've already birthed and is in the world, you can give it to somebody else to care for. You can't do that when it's inside your body. That's kind of a really difficult thing to do when it can't exist apart from you. So like infanticide is a bit different because you could just give that kid to somebody else if you really don't want it or can't support it. Did we suddenly transport to a world where like grandparents don't take care of kids anymore, or like orphanages?
Well, this
don't
is
exist?
why the right wants to push the nuclear family. They want to get your grandparents the fuck out of your home. They want to get you out into the countryside so you can birth some beautiful white children, right? Oh wait, shit! You're not supposed to say the silent part. Shit. No, but it's true, right? Like they historically that's why they pushed the nuclear family in the first place as a family structure, to move away from the living structure of the extended family, to get people onto their own properties, and to expand white wealth, expand white land ownership, and get away from us filthy brown people, right? Like and in turn, right, systemically disenfranchise us in the process. Like it's
Man.
I hate to be the one like always like kind of seeming to take away from some of these topics by pointing out the intersectionality, but like it's right there, right? It's like they're so unabashed about it.
Yeah, if I am able to have biological children, I'm going to raise 2 white communists, and and the GOP can fuck off.
They refer to each other as comrade.
Right, exactly.
So
fuck you, GOP.
This argument, like comparing like a fetus to like a parasite, that always seemed like the weakest argument for the pro-abortion side, right? It seemed like an easy way to attack the left when we make these types of arguments. People have a visceral reaction when we say those things, and then on the other side of it, it's like, well, when does life actually start? Like from an average person, right? I mean, you can say that, well, scientifically this and that, but from an average person, they feel, hey, when a woman has become pregnant, there's a life going inside of her. So I feel like trying to make some sort of division, right, where we can get some, I don't know, morally gray victory, that life has begun now, like at this point in time, that's politically more advantageous. I think that just puts us in a terrible position. Go ahead, Joe.
I think it's also bad for women who have miscarriages. The idea of constantly referring to anything inside of you as a parasite comes back to
it was
this
very
thing of,
aggressive, I admit.
Yeah, moral motivation, right? It's like it makes the left look like very scientific and a bit cruel. We don't like that language particularly, but there's a much better example, which is called the violinist example, like this idea that you have a world-class violinist who requires dialysis, and you wake up one day and they're attached to your body and you're providing dialysis for this violinist, and everyone says, oh, it'll only be 9 months. It'll only be 9 months. This person is needed in this world. They're so special. Just 9 months. And it's kind of like, well, would any man submit to being on dialysis and attached to a person and having their health detrimentally affected, their income detrimentally affected, all of these things completely changed to save this other person's life? Where does bodily autonomy end? Instead of focusing on where does life begin, I'm a virtue ethicist. We sidestep the question of whether life, where it starts or where it ends, whether a fetus is considered a baby or not. That is not important. It's more about like you as an agent and what you do. And it's like, where does your bodily autonomy, where does your responsibility, where does that end? That's more central to the question. But I agree. While I understand the parasite thing, and I've actually heard women pregnant walking around being like, this parasite is ruining my fucking life.
My sister referred to it. Yeah, she was just like, that was her joke.
Yeah.
Like, because when she was like showing a lot and they're like, oh, what is, like, are you pregnant? Because people fucking ask pregnant women this, which, like, come on. But
Don't
that
ever ask somebody if they're pregnant.
her reaction sometimes to just be like, no, it's just gas. I have a parasite.
Yeah. And it wasn't very. That's why when I said it, I was just like, "Ooh, that's aggressive." But I mean, I meant it though.
Well,
But, like,
and then
the reason I say parasite is because it's like, okay, when the baby is there, done, popped out, doctor spanked the baby, breathing. Oh wait, that is a being. That being is there, independently existing. But when that baby is inside of you, I mean, it's fully dependent on you as a person. That baby is a part of you. That's a part of you. Until that baby pops out, it is fully a part of you, fully dependent on you. And hey, parasite is aggressive, but I mean parasite in the way that, like, it's not a full being in and of itself yet. It is pretty much a part of you.
So the reason why I'm
So what you're saying is
I can
facts
see
don't
why
care
it's
about your
damaging.
feelings. That's what
It
I'm
is very
hearing
cool.
here.
So
Oh, I'm sorry.
I mean-
no, it's fine. No, it's just that I'm pro-choice, but like these are, if I wasn't, these are like easy arguments to attack, right?
It is very cool.
Like on the other side, right? Well, if you kill a pregnant woman, should that be a double homicide, right? And many people would say it should be, right?
That's what I advocated on in terms of actual policy work in Australia. It was called Zoe's Bill in New South Wales. I worked on that because a pregnant woman was hit by a car and her family petitioned that the person who did that should be charged with 2 counts of homicide versus 1. And you have to, like, that's the thing, the moral sentiment in the moment. People are like, oh my gosh, this woman died, she's pregnant. That is more than just a normal murder. That's more than just normal manslaughter. That's what the public feels. So you have to show them the sort of like crazy ramifications that can come from viewing it that way and how it does limit women's autonomy. It's really, and that's why I bring up things like miscarriage as well, because when we think about how we talk about fetuses, there are lots of people who have fetuses, and it's not something that is pure to just abortion issues. So when you talk about a fetus as a parasite, a woman who's just had a miscarriage who desperately wanted that baby, that's not a parasite to her. The woman who's been hit while pregnant, that wasn't a parasite to that family. That was a baby that was very much wanted. But when we talk about it that way, we're like, oh my God, no, we're making it into this huge life and this thing that people are not going to want to allow women to choose not to support. So it's probably one of the trickiest areas in this policy area.
I fully agree. That is very one with what PrimeCayes was saying about how, like, that is a very easy point to attack because it does seem very heartless. It does seem very,
they're gonna attack us anyway. It doesn't even matter. We could be the most gentle, just the fact that we allow abortion to happen is basis for attacks. It's it doesn't matter. They'll make shit up to attack us.
So here's like a flip side of all this, right? Like, I think a lot of the arguments that people who are pro-life make are incredibly disingenuous. For example, like when they are talking about abortion being murder or whatever like that, they don't really respond to it as if they think that there are hundreds of thousands of people in the country being murdered in like camps. They don't respond to it the way you would expect someone to respond to it, the way if they found out that millions of people were being killed every year. And I think that's because deep down they know it's not the same thing. They know it's not the same, and they know that end of the day, they want to infringe on rights
Yes.
to infringe on rights.
And even
Oops, go for it, Lyra.
Sorry. But even going off of that into like a more a legal point of view, it's like, okay, if we have to, you can't just be like, if we want to go full on one way, you have to go all the way. If like you mentioned about, okay, if a person is murdered and they were pregnant, does that count as a double homicide? It's like, okay, if we're going to count that as a double homicide, it's like, all right, if something growing inside a person and that person is pregnant, okay, when does child support payments start? When does insurance come into the picture? Because if we're going to legally count that as another person, we got to take it all the way. So it's like it's a very weird leveling ground, because it's like, oh, well, are we in limbo or are we not? Because if it's homicide, that's a person. I mean, we gotta get all these things. It has to be all the way.
Is it, or if they were conceived in the United States, are they then like a citizen because they were conceived here and that's a person?
Yeah.
So
Yeah, also, like when Republicans bring this up, they never think about these things. So it's like, okay, what about this? Is the government going to start helping, pay with like? Because like my mother, she's a caseworker. They don't let you file for childcare until your child is 6 weeks old. If we're going to count a person who is pregnant as two people, as what's growing inside that person is a person, okay, we're gonna start giving every like pregnant person childcare early. There's a lot of reasons why the government doesn't do that, but like if we're gonna go all the way, that's things that we have to add on. But Republicans never look at that. They just go and like with Riverboat Jack point out, I also agree that's because subconsciously they know it's not the same. There is a difference there.
One story I love, or like a hypothetical scenario that I think exemplifies how so many of the arguments against abortion are coming in bad faith, is that it's like, okay, if you're in a burning building and there's a 5-year-old child and like in a petri dish, like for in vitro, whatever, like a fetus, and you can only save one, you are going to choose the child every single fucking time. Like, but if you were saying, oh no, but all lives are precious, it's the same, like that life is still viable, how would you be able to choose, right? You'd have to flip a coin. If you really believe, you can even say it differently. Not even a child. Let's say it's like a complete, like a fridge full of fertilized like fetuses, and they're like, you can only save one because you can only carry that many. And it's like, you know, let's say 20 fetuses, you would shave the fucking child every single time. You would not like leave the child there in a burning building and like grab a bunch of like fetuses, like, because they're not the same thing. And I think at a deep level, those people realize that, but they have to, yeah.
So here's a question. When like talking about abortion, like this ties in at least a little bit into like the economic pressures on abortion as well. But do we think that men should be able to give up parental rights to children like that they don't want to be involved with? Which also means that like which also means that men wouldn't be paying child support and stuff like that. So just wanted to introduce that to the panel.
Before we tackle that, I wanted to, and Joe, I saw you had your hand up for something previously. I wanted to tackle something else you had said, right? That pro-life or anti-choice individuals, they just want to infringe on rights because they want to infringe on rights. I wouldn't say that either. I think there's like all kinds of like really complex reasons that people decide to be like pro-life, right? Or anti-choice. I think anti-choice is better, but like anti-choice, there's all kinds of reasons why they do that. So to paint them with a broad brush like that, the reason why I'm saying all these things is because I remember in college I was at this I think it was a debate, you know, between the two sides. We had guest speakers come, and I showed up. It was a class event. I remember, like, for a health class. And I remember sitting next to this conservative guy who was always an asshole, this tall, white. And this guy is always giving me problems. And we started arguing about these things. And I went there pretty half-cocked. right? And I felt like I embarrassed myself like pretty good, like with the arguments I was making. And when you paint with these broad brushes like that, people come at these things for all kinds of reasons. So I think if we actually are going to convert people on this, right, and there's lots of people who can convert, they definitely have to be a bit more nuanced in our approach. And I'm saying this now. People are going to remember how I was lectured on this previously when it comes to ACAB, but let's ignore that for now. We'll come back to that some other day. But yeah, like these arguments, I just don't want you to go through what I did. And I remember walking away from that realizing, yeah, like I thought that I was on the morally just side, you know, of the pro-life side, or sorry, excuse me, the pro-choice side. But I didn't know how to express it. And I felt these people who had so much practice arguing against people like us, right? They brushed my arguments aside like it was nothing. They just brushed it aside as nothing, and it made me look like a fool. So I don't want us to do that. So I just want us to have sharper arguments.
This does go into what Joe was saying earlier about being a bit more like careful and nuanced with our discussions into abortion, because like women do have, well, not just women, I'm sorry, but like baby poppers. People have babies. They do have they do have very different, like, you know, perspective and views on like the seriousness of abortion. What the thing that is growing inside them, like what to consider that. And so we should, yeah.
Well, like one of the big things about that is just like, this is why I don't like engaging with like people who are like at the varying stages of like arguing the morality of abortion or anything like that. We need to get down to how it tangibly affects society and what outcomes that would have on society. And I think that where we're at right now, that's where we have to argue from, because
what the implications of government.
The desired if the desired outcome is fewer abortions, or like, hey, you want fewer abortions to happen, well, there are a bunch of tried and true ways to achieve that outcome that don't involve limiting women's bodily autonomy. Like there have been actual, at the state level, like policies, whether it's expanding sex education, but like comprehensive sex education, whether it's making birth control more readily available, especially for those in more marginalized communities. Like these are things that have led to a stark decrease in the abortion rate. And so if that's truly like their metric of success, is that there are fewer abortions, then I think, you know, it's easy to pivot the conversation to how that happens. Because when you make abortion legal, that doesn't actually reduce the number of abortions. It just means that you're increasing the number of unsafe, like illegal abortions, and that puts women's lives in jeopardy. So that, yeah.
Go ahead, Joe.
Yeah, I was going to say a few things. First of all, someone who works like very much in my like academic field, George Lakoff, he says that it shouldn't be pro-life. I know this is a semantics debate, but that's my field. I'm sorry. So he says it shouldn't be pro-life, pro-choice, because that makes the pro-choice side sound like liberal and individualistic and all about like, oh, I want to have a choice. You know, it should be like pro-life v pro-women, which I know then excludes people who are not women who have the potential to have children. But what he's trying to say is that it should be about focusing on the agent's rights to their own body instead of the actual choice itself, like the action. It should be about the agent, not the action. And we should be prioritizing, saying it doesn't really matter if a fetus is a life or whatever. It doesn't matter. What we're saying is that a woman who we know for sure is a life, or a non-binary person, anyone carrying a child who we know already is a life, that they should have their rights put above the rights of whatever this questionable issue is, right? And also I think it's interesting to consider that abortion and abortion law has been around a lot longer than it has been so polarized politically. So I mean and this comes into what Empress was saying about the intersectionality of issues like this. Like for instance, the first criminalization laws in the 1850s were because Black women really held the monopoly on abortion drugs in terms of providing them for people, and doctors wanted to protect their specialized knowledge, so criminalized abortion so that the only people who could be giving abortions were doctors. And it wasn't until the 1970s, 1960s, around the Roe period, where it became this incredibly partisan thing at the same time as we sort of had a real rise in the religious right. It's important to keep in mind women like Susan B. Anthony, people that you consider to be feminist heroes, were actively anti-abortion and campaigned against abortion rights. So it hasn't always been this like super partisan thing where Republicans are pro-life and Democrats are pro-choice. It wasn't really until the 70s that division took place in like a meaningful way. So it is interesting because there was a long period where abortion wasn't this controversial, polarizing, politically weaponized issue.
Yeah, well, and it was like one of the things that changed a significant part of public perception was, I believe they showed a picture of a woman, and she was like a mother of 3 or 4, and she went to got a back alley abortion, but ended up bleeding out and was found dead on the floor. And I think I remember reading somewhere that like I forget if it was the prosecutor or someone or her family, but they showed that picture and spread it out wide because they're like, this is what happens when you criminalize something like this. Like, it doesn't stop women from having abortions. It just means more are going to die from seeking an abortion. And that was part of what changed the tides of public opinion and why they were finally able to, get some protections in place. But that's the reality of it, right? Is it's like, look, if you make it illegal, rich women will still continue to get abortions, and women, gender non-binary, and trans men, anyone with a uterus who doesn't have the necessary or the available resources to go somewhere else to seek a safe abortion, many of them will die. That's the reality.
Yeah, I don't know. Like, here's my very simple premise. Okay, bodily autonomy, good. Like, bodily autonomy, good. Do any of us disagree on that?
No, I like that.
Yeah, we like body autonomy.
I know.
I like it.
Okay,
Personally.
bodily autonomy is
it.
good. Therefore, women getting abortions that they want is good. But boom, end of discussion. Like that's
And
what they
that's
want to
why
do with
big
their body.
percentages. Thank you very much.
Back it up, folks. Panel's over.
That seems to, I
Please.
hate to,
No, go
that
ahead.
seems simple,
Mhm.
but what people will counter with is, what about how can you say that potential life doesn't have any autonomy? Like, and I know the arguments because I'm on your side. Like, I know what the arguments are back. But what I'm saying is, it's very easy to say, oh, you get autonomy because you're a person. This is why the personhood argument always comes into the debate. Because at what stage?
I don't care about personhood. Like, they could be a fully grown human. You have the ability to cut them off. So
Okay,
like,
cool.
yeah, like here, like
Personhood plays no relevance.
Personhood is just like a game that they like to play.
Yes.
And it has no bearing on the actual discussion.
They don't care about the personhood of people starving in Africa. They don't care about the personhood of Pakistani
find
women
whatever
who are suffering under
They'll
regimes in the Middle
develop.
East.
They will see line. They will use whatever debate tactic that is in their arsenal to make it look like they're on the moral high ground, that they're better than you because they're against abortion or killing babies.
Right.
Quote unquote.
Right.
It doesn't matter
Right.
what you come at them with. It doesn't matter.
Yeah.
All you can do is try to pivot back to like, hey, look, this is a distraction, call it out. But like with a lot of those people, when they're not coming in good faith to talk about these things anyway, it's difficult to have a quote unquote like meaningful conversation about it.
Yeah.
Mm-mm. Also, Joe, I'm sorry if I seemed very like dismissive of what you're saying.
No,
I'm sorry
actually,
if it seemed that way. I just
You actually re-said what I said in a way that made much more sense. So I was very appreciative of what you said, actually, because I was like, oh,
Yeah,
that's how it should have sounded.
Wait, I was just right. I was just like, I hope she doesn't think I'm a cold, unfeeling leftist.
Unbelievable.
Yeah.
Also-
How could you?
Also, for like people who are like, but what about the men's autonomy? Men
They don't have-
can
they-
men
they-
can do what they want with their
What
bodies.
is being threatened?
they-
Like what part
No,
of
hang
men's
on. Very simple, right?
there's
All
people
men
who-
should also have equal access to abortions.
Yeah.
Well,
but
I just
but
thought
like
it's
a
very
lot of
simple.
you know what?
A
You
lot of
know
people-
When
what?
your body is on the line, right, and there are some men for whom this is the case, right? Yeah, you have that right.
A lot of conservatives will say something along the lines of, well, if women can get abortions for any reason, I should be able to give up my parental rights to the child and not have to pay child support.
Which is
And
so
I am
bad.
curious to hear what like the panel thinks about that.
All right, go ahead,
I
Maddie.
mean, I remember this was another conversation I had with someone a while back, but it was like the real test for men for whether or not they actually support abortion, and it's not about bodily autonomy, is if somehow we were able to create an artificial womb where the womb could be placed inside the man's body to like bring the child to term, only until then where you'll be able to say, okay, either the woman can have an abortion and like not carry it, or you can carry it in your own body in this artificial womb to term. What do you say? And
Be a
like
seahorse.
we all fucking know what they're gonna say. So it's like turns out maybe you aren't as concerned about the quality of the sanctity of life, and really like you, that only then will they actually give a shit about bodily autonomy. But to go back to Riverboat Jack's question about like, can they forfeit their rights, to be financially liable for the child? I don't know, because part of me says I would be okay with that if it weren't already so freaking hard for women to like get the financial and like assistance that they need to raise a child. Like if these were things that were already provided by our society and by the government, then maybe I would be more willing to have some discretion there. Also, if women had equal access to an abortion where it really was their choice of whether like they can say, I'm keeping the child not because they feel obligated to, but because it's truly their choice, and the man says, okay, well, no, I don't want that, maybe. But there are just so many other factors. It's hard to say definitively what I would support.
So, I would say into the first thing in terms of the artificial wombs. If I was arguing against you, I would say that women's life are built to carry, women's bodies are built to carry life, and that's the most natural and best thing for a child. I would, even given the opportunity, I would use these artificial means that will inevitably be more deficient.
But what if it wasn't deficient? What if it was fine? I'll be like, but I thought the sanctity was important. Wouldn't you use anything in your power to ensure that that child's brought to term, and you can transform your body into a machine that nourishes the child and brings it into this world? Is there anything more holy and righteous than that?
Go for that.
Like, so of course they fucking wouldn't, because it was never about bodily autonomy for them, or like it was about controlling women.
No, I mean, I'm just saying as argumentation. My only point is just to have the best argumentation.
So is your point that they would say that it's not natural, quote unquote?
Yeah, I mean, I think that'll be the
okay. So then we can get into the argument that then cancer patients shouldn't take chemotherapy because that's not natural. You can get into those kind of discussions, or if you have
IVF, in vitro fertilization, right? That's not natural. Well, that also is a sticking point for a lot of So I know this because I have people in my family that are anti-abortion people, but IVF is the one area where it gets dicey. So that if you're getting pushback from those people, IVF is a really good thing to bring up, because
some of them don't like
also
that either.
vaccines.
But I don't care what they like. I don't care what they like. It's an argument
no, I'm just
against
saying
them.
in terms of argumentation that they would just bring that up. But go ahead, Joe.
I was going to talk on the ability to say no to child support, which I think is super interesting, because all of these people who are pro-life, this is why I don't like choice as a word, or the playing down of like it's just a simple thing. We should be doing more structurally. If you're a pro-life person, you should be doing more structurally to make it possible for women to have children in a financially and economically viable way. Now, a lot of women, for instance, can't even get abortions because they can't afford that procedure, let alone being able to raise a child. I think the distinct difference is once the child is had, you can't opt out. That is a child, and you're completely ignoring the rights of the child. There is an international covenant on the rights of the child, which says that a child has the right to know its parents unless it is separated because it is necessary. And unfortunately, the fact that you financially don't want to support a child isn't grounds for that separation. Secondly, it ignores the fact that men already get away with washing their hands of so much parental responsibility, not to mention the fact that so many men don't pay child support. And it is very difficult to enforce. And many women who are owed child support go without ever receiving it because there's just no enforcement. So it is not the same to suggest that a woman's right to control over her own body is different, is analogous with a man's right to not pay for a child he helped to create. So I don't think it's analogous at all. And I think that the way to tackle those two things is the same. Create structural environments that make it easier for women to make decisions that aren't coerced by economic reasons. If men feel that they are economically put in a situation they can't afford by a woman having a child, then we should make it so that the economic situation is better for anyone who wants to have a child.
I also want to answer the question from Riverboat Jack. Yes, I also think that no, men should not be able to, should not be able to say, I'm trying so hard to keep up with these terms, I'm sorry. But the other party should not be able to opt out of child support. And, I will call back to what I said earlier. While that thing, child, whatever is growing inside of that person, it's totally a part of that person. It's not a being in and of itself. It is still attached onto that person. That baby popper, that's a part of the baby popper. So while that person is pregnant, they 100%, I'll say it, that the person having the baby has way more say on whether or not to have an abortion than the other party, because the thing that is growing, the baby, it's attached to that person. It's a part of that person. So it's in their body. So hell yeah, they have more right to say if they want an abortion. I mean, you can be sad about it. It's definitely very hurt. I can see people being very hurt by it, but it's part of that person's body. You can't tell that person what to do with their body if they want to have an abortion. It's sad that you don't agree with it, but they still 100% have that right to overstep you on that because it's a part of their body. That is it. But when that being is out, when that being becomes an individual existence in and of itself, that child is no longer a part of the baby popper's body. Okay, so now it takes two to tango, and now this is an individual being which you had half a part in creating. So yes, you have a responsibility. So I don't think the other party should be able to opt out of child support because you get child support after the baby pops out. Once the baby pops out, that's a being that you created half of. And you should be held accountable for that. I don't think it's contradictory at all that the baby popper gets to say, it gets to decide whether or not to have an abortion. They should, because while that person is pregnant, it's a part of their body.
So we had a person who's a regular here on this channel argue with us on exactly this point. It was late night. Maddie, were you there for that? I'm not sure if you were there.
Was it about abortion? I don't think so.
Oh, okay, maybe not.
Otherwise, I would have lost my mind. But...
Oh, no, okay. There was someone who was there for that one. I forget. But a regular to this channel came on and was arguing for men being able to give up parental rights in general. And I guess, and if I'm remembering his arguments correctly, and I might not be, but if I'm remembering his arguments correctly, he would say that women, first, the act of conception, in talking about it in a consensual manner, but the act of conception is not equal responsibility, right? Because women are aware that they can get pregnant, right? That this is a thing that can happen to them. And so even
Are men not aware of that?
Yeah, no.
Yeah. So wait, it's our fault because we can give birth, so then we should expect every time we have sex.
I'd like all men to know that, just in case they didn't know, you guys can ejaculate. Just anyone with a penis can ejaculate. So please just keep in mind that might result in a child.
Homeboy, you can get a vasectomy, homeboy. You can get a vasectomy.
Sorry,
You don't have to worry about nothing.
Sorry, Prime.
Actually, yeah, this is a really, really important point that I just kind of want to drive home for a minute. So, again, for those of you who don't know in the audience, I happen to be trans, right? And I actually had my doctor, like, very, very seriously sit me down and be like, look, okay, you're going on HRT, right? And you probably know other trans people who are also on HRT. Just because you're on HRT doesn't mean you can't get pregnant, and it doesn't mean you can't get other people pregnant. It is a possibility, but for many people, it's not the reality. And she had multiple specific examples she was willing to talk about at length of people she knew who were both trans and both on HRT and both wound up getting each other pregnant because they didn't know they could get each other pregnant because of all the fucking dumb misinformation that conservatives put out there on HRT that winds up becoming normalized in the medical system. And people just say these things and take things as fact that aren't true. It's like, seriously, don't accidentally get pregnant. But if you do, you should be able to get an abortion.
Was that Gambit? That was Gambit, wasn't it? It was GSU
Wait, what was
Gambit.
Gambit?
What? No, it
Prime.
wasn't.
Did Gambit get pregnant?
It wasn't Gambit. No, it was someone else. No, I promise you. It wasn't
Money
Gambit.
on that.
Oh, I thought you were saying Gambit was pregnant. I was like, what?
I was like, I don't think that.
I was like, that's new.
Tough.
But no, so the point was, and again, I'm sorry if I'm misconstruing their arguments, but as I understand, their point was, women, like men, of course, have a certain amount of responsibility, but if it's a woman's own body, right, and part of that autonomy of her own body is managing it and understanding that this act could involve getting pregnant. You've made that choice. There's that word again. At that moment in time, and now more of the responsibility for actually using protection, first of all, falls on the woman, according to this person, not me. Oh God, please.
Okay,
not
so
me.
what's the choice? The choice is having sex.
The choice is
right?
having sex, and
Okay.
having
They're
sex
just an
without
unwitting.
protection. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
They're not making the choice though, right? 'Cause,
Okay.
like they're just totally separate. They are
It's-
just
it's-
an unwitting participant, right?
No, this is
It's so weird.
No,
how,
like, I
like,
know you don't like
Yeah.
that. To me, it seems like a very like crafty way of trying to absolve yourself of
Yeah.
any like responsibility or like taking accountability for your own actions. It's like, nah, dude, like
Yeah.
women don't just like oops pregnant, like with no like there's no like oops immaculate conception. It's like no,
Even
like
that
it's
aside, though,
usually
Well, no,
And, like,
like
usually
there's still the
there's,
issue
like,
of
a
like
guy.
accepting like culpability for one action and the consequences of one action doesn't mean that everything that comes after that you consent to or can't object to at some point in the future. Getting behind the
Right.
wheel of a car doesn't mean you consent to getting into a car accident when someone rear ends you for insurance
But at
money.
the same
right?
time,
Like-
saying that we consent to you getting us pregnant and then saying that's all on us is a mistake.
Mhm.
It's just like it is 100%.
So he's not saying
absolving.
he didn't say it was all
and you can
all in
revoke
women.
consent for sex at any time. Remember that.
He didn't say it was all in women, but I find Empress's argument response is really good. In fact, I wish I had said that to him when this was happening. That was actually a really good response to that. But he didn't say it was all in women. He didn't say that. To be clear. But Joe, you were gonna say something?
No, I was just biting my lip.
Okay. So Dancing Spoon, and remember this is Dancing Spoon. This is not me. So I don't know what it means.
No.
Dancing Spoon says, "What about entrapment?" And again, not me. I didn't say this. If a man is entrapped into impregnating a woman, should they be able to give up parental rights? I didn't say this.
How do you even
That's
prove
not me.
that?
Not me.
and
Not
that
me.
like
Not
doesn't
me.
happen like
Would that
Still
does that
your
It does
happen?
happen quite a
Sorry.
bit.
they,
but it
no,
doesn't-
like men's
your
rights
baby.
activists love bringing this up
Right.
as like, oh well, what about this? As if it's something that happens regularly, and they will claim till they're red in the face, like, no, I definitely know someone who this happened to. It's like, no, like, first of all, how are you going to fucking prove that? How are you going to like? I'm sorry, I find that like an absurd straw man of like thathappened.com.
You know what? If it does
That
happen,
happened.
though, I think maybe they should be able to take that to court and prove it.
Yeah.
If they
There's
have
no-
evidence of it,
But how
sure.
do you like?
If they have evidence, sure. Then absolutely go
unless
for it.
she's like saying I did this, to trap you. There's no other way to prove it. You know what I mean? Like there has to be documented evidence.
Got
and,
you,
like,
April Fools. Like,
Right,
Yeah.
like I'm in cahoots with my uterus. Gotcha.
There's a
Like,
response to that, but you're definitely not going to like it. Joe, you go
what-
first.
I think you need to be careful because this actually happens to women a lot as well. There's a lot of entrapment where
For
men
women,
don't
yeah.
use
That's what I was about
condoms,
to say.
or
Yeah.
they swap
They
out,
poke a hole in it.
condoms,
Poke a hole.
Yep.
they interfere with birth control medicine, or they force women to get abortions that they don't want to get. So it can happen both ways, and it does happen a lot. There is no legal precedent to take someone to court for it. It is mostly dealt with. If you have a good clinician, they should be able to pick up on signs of this sort of thing occurring. You should be able to talk to them about it, about plans. I think at the end of the day, this is something you need to be conscious of when you are sleeping with someone generally. Like I'm on medication where if I were to get pregnant, it would be really, really, really bad, right? So I am in a situation where my doctor has me using multiple forms of contraception at any one time. One is not enough because getting pregnant would be disastrous. And I think people need to understand that like hormonal contraception, barrier contraception, these things aren't 100% foolproof. So you can go, as Maddie said, difficult to prove, right? If you don't want to get protection, you need to be taking the steps to make sure, like if you don't want to get someone pregnant, you need to be taking the steps to make sure that definitely doesn't happen. If it does happen, it's the same sort of discussion you would be in with any partner where someone accidentally got pregnant. There's no difference. I think what Maddie is saying is really important, which is I wouldn't say this is an outlier. I think there are probably a lot of cases where this does happen. I don't think it's fake. I don't think people are making it up. However, you don't build policy and legislation and institutional practice around outliers. A majority of the cases where we're talking about the rights to bodily autonomy and the rights relating to parental rights, a majority of the cases, this is not the case. So maybe that's something we build in. But when women don't even have the right to make choices about their own bodies, I don't think this is necessarily what we focus on.
Now, I do have an because here is a case where I think that a lot of men's rights activists have a valid point. A lot of women do commit sexual assault against men. And so in those circumstances, I think the issue becomes like really difficult and hard to like figure out. Again, if you can prove that you were sexually assaulted or raped and that is the cause of the pregnancy, I don't think you should have any obligation to that child whatsoever. But it becomes a very difficult issue, especially within our patriarchal society where like men underreport their sexual assaults and those sexual assaults are taken far less than seriously. And like I bring this up just because I personally know a lot of men who've shared with me in confidence that they were sexually assaulted or raped. And like, that is an issue that I think should be discussed. And it might be outside the purview of this discussion, which is about, at least it was specifically about abortion.
I'm glad I'm not the only one who was thinking about that. Thanks for bringing that up.
You can talk about anything. But the language of proving it, I think is something we want to be careful. Again, I want to make it clear, in case people are misunderstanding me, because Joe has the same problem when people misunderstand her. I'm pro-choice. I'm pro-choice. I need to make it very clear in case you got it mistaken, right? I'm pro-choice, but I'm talking about like how to have the best argumentation. And do you want to go down the path of saying, well, of course, you've got to prove it, right? Because when we say that to a rape victim, right? Saying, well, we have to prove it in court before, like, we'll let you have that abortion, right? And so on this side here, we're talking about the parental rights. Well, you have to prove it in court before you can give up those parental rights that, the birth control was sabotaged or something like that. Go ahead, Joe.
I was just going to say, but I really understand that, and I agree. But you're acting as if men don't opt out of. No, I'm saying your position is acting as if men don't opt out without the system as is. Men opt out of child support all the fucking time. Like it's different than rape because we're not trying to prove a crime here in the same way that you're not trying to get the woman punished. You're trying to obfuscate your parental responsibility. And this is why I tried to make the point before, while I understand how unfair it is and I acknowledge that it happens, once you get to the point that a child exists, that child is now an actor in the decision, and that child has rights, and your relationship with that child exists externally to how that child was.
I want to directly go off of what Joe just said. So, like, with case in which, like, both parties were consenting to sex. Sorry, I like hiccuped in.
No, me too.
Sorry.
I did the same thing just now.
I just like
Yeah.
out of nowhere. Sorry, but in cases where both parties were consenting to have sex, and like somebody pops up pregnant. Now, one of the parties or either of the parties may not have fully intended to get the person pregnant or even meant to get pregnant. But I don't think that absolves the fact that there is now a child in the world, and that child needs to be taken care of. And, you know, I mean, you may not have meant to get pregnant. That person may not have meant to get that other person pregnant, but the child is still there and needs to be taken care of. So, like, that responsibility still isn't absolved. And I do think that, like, in cases where if both parties were, like, you know, consenting to have sex, there is still a level of accountability there. In cases where of sexual assault and rape, I have to think about that a little bit harder, you know, because it is a gray area, at least now for me. At least in the way that I can't like articulate it very well. But in cases where both parties were consenting to the act of having sex, there's an accountability there, and like that child is still there, and that child still needs to be taken care of.
Joe,
I just want to go back because I know Spoon's there. I just want to say it very clearly that I think the same people who want to argue against abortion and the people who want to argue about a man's ability to obfuscate his parental rights, the same solution is there for them. And that is increase economic welfare to the point that it is easy for an individual to have a child and support that child. You watch abortion go down, you watch men be able to obfuscate their parental responsibility. If it is not essential to, if you are capable of raising a child on a single income in your country, that's the best way to lower abortion rates and to allow men to obfuscate their parental responsibility.
So I was going to respond to, and I'll go to you, Maddie. I think a response to like how the world is currently, right? So the current, like you're saying, well, in the future, what we should do is, you know, increase economic opportunities so that, you know, these things are balanced and a woman can perfectly take care of a child by themselves, and yeah, which I agree with 100%, right? But I guess the response to that would be, and that other men are going outside the law to engage, to abandon their parental rights. Oh, what does that make a difference to me, a law-abiding man, right? Like this is me going through the courts, right? Going through the courts and saying that, you know, I wanted to have this child aborted, right? I didn't want to have her to get pregnant at all, right? But she made a certain decision, and then I'm making a certain decision. I don't want
and this is why I don't like this language of choice framing this entire issue, because 9 times out of 10, it's not a fucking choice. Like, there are lots of women who fall pregnant and didn't want to get pregnant, but their states have banned abortion, or their states haven't banned abortion, but they cannot afford to get an abortion. They don't have access. They can't take the time off work. You've got random fucking legislation that says they have to go to 3 doctors before they can get an abortion, and they can't afford 3 doctors' visits. There are lots of people who don't want to have kids, who have kids. Boo fucking who. I don't care that you don't want a kid. That's unfortunately the situation for a lot of people. I don't feel sad for a man who fucked someone and now a baby is there and he doesn't want to pay. I'm sorry. You have a right to that child. It's got nothing to do with the mother and what she did to you. Wow. I can hear Spoon, and I know that he's making the rape analogy, and I can hear it, and I haven't thought about it a lot. I'm just going to sit here for a bit.
I just wanted to say I really liked Empress's framing of this in terms of consent, because that seems to be like the common thread across a lot of these questions, where it's like, is it okay for the man to forego his rights for something like, and I think it all comes down to like understanding consent, understanding that it can be revoked after being given. And I mean, in the cases where they're like, oh, if a woman, like, I think the term is like sperm jacks, or if the guy like pokes a hole, that has everything to do with a lack of consent. And that person, it not being on the same wavelength, where they're like not saying that that they consent, like I consent to having sex, but I do not consent to having unsafe sex or unprotected sex. I don't know if I don't know if I have a necessary conclusion, because I think a lot of the questions that we've delved into are very, very complicated. But I like the framing of this argument around consent and how it has a direct impact on then maybe the way we look at these individual instances and well, how would we address one thing or another?
Okay, you're definitely not gonna like this argument. You're not gonna like this argument a lot. But okay. Okay, once again, pro-choice, all right, and not in favor of the abandoning your parental rights.
Yes, you're not evil. We get it, Prime.
Sure, but yeah.
So many disclaimers.
So no, because people are gonna yell at me.
Prime out of context.
So yeah, exactly. Oh boy, they've already done it before. And they failed. So would this be an example of wage theft, right? So you made it into an economic issue. No, you made it to an economic issue, right? You made it to an economic issue, right? Saying that the economics involved is that women don't have the opportunity.
So then women are the bosses of men in this aspect? That's what wage theft is.
No. I mean, just
women are already engaged in a fetal mode of production in the home, so they're basically serfs. So is it wage exploitation? Is the serf exploiting the lord? I don't think so.
So wage theft, oh god, wage theft through by way of the state, right? By proxy. So
wait, does that mean taxes are wage theft, Prime?
You were the first. The left I was undercover this whole time.
But they might make that case. But wage. Because what you're saying is that this person who did not consent, there's that word again, to the baby being brought to term, right? That person now has this responsibility, right? And this responsibility in how we decide to handle this in human society is that you got a portion of your wages have to go to support this child. You didn't want, that you say that you didn't want, right? But the mother decided that she did want it, okay? So is that wage theft? On economic,
No.
not every man. So one thing is
because you're using wage theft so liberally at this point that anything can be considered a wage theft. Taxes can be considered a wage theft. Bills can be considered wage theft. It's such a liberal.
Product. That's
wait a
wage
minute.
theft.
Hang on.
No.
Maybe we can take this to a really based kind of level. All uses of currency are necessarily exploitative as part of the capitalist system, right? So yeah, I mean, it's just the state inflicting violence upon individuals. Whether that violence is justified, well, that's really just a matter of perspective. But maybe we should deconstruct the unjust hierarchies of our unfair court system and unfair legislation around these issues, right? And that's how you really solve the issue here. Maybe that's what it is, right?
So
maybe that's how we solve wage theft.
I would say, they would say, not I would say, but they would say that first, not all men are well off, for instance, right? This is the case. So a part of the thing is that women have less economic opportunities. Their financial outcomes by the end of their lives are not equal to what men's are typically, right? So starting off the same education and all of that, right? But still, there are plenty of men who are economically disadvantaged, and so if they have to pay child support, this is a massive toll on their own economics, right? And to avoid that, they're saying, hey, well, let's cancel, excuse me.
Okay.
Let's end this pregnancy, right? So this is a financial burden that neither of us can afford. But now you've imposed this on them. And so would this not constitute as wage theft and economic reasons where now this person has to go through this economic burden for 18 years, economic burden that could be seriously detrimental to their lives with what they'll have to do to make those payments. And this is a person who's not dodging, right? Once again, staying within the law, right? I mean, that's an option, but this is a law-abiding person, so they're staying within the law. But
I mean, I think what you're really pointing out is that capitalism is bad, and that if we lived in a system that didn't have coercive practices around the things that people need to live in like a modern society, like if you went homeless, you got a home. If you wanted water, you get free water. You get free electricity. You get free education. You get free healthcare. All that stuff. Then I'd be, you know what? Then I'm like, sure. You know what? Cool. You can give up your parental responsibilities, no problem, because the mother and the child aren't going to be like fucked. Unfortunately, we don't live in that world. And while it might be an unjust imposition upon the man's ultimate potential earnings, I think it also does measurable harm to deny like the mother and the kid that income that they would need in order to support that child adequately.
Because here's the thing that really baffles me about like men who are really against like child support. You're essentially taking food out of a baby's mouth. Like that money goes to feeding your kid, like
clothing your kid, like
I want
giving them
it's so weird to me.
Yeah.
It's literally taking candy from a baby.
Maybe I could put myself in Prime's fictional character's head here a minute, right? So this guy, right, there's no bodily autonomy question for the man, right, in this case, right? So if it's not a matter of bodily autonomy, what role does he play? Well, he's effectively the biological donor, right? Donor, and it involves him paying money to the family. That it's effectively a capital transaction, right? So, but we already know from U.S. Supreme Court cases that money is protected free speech, right? But this then would also mean, logically by extension, that a corporation could be the real parent. So maybe we just need to make corporations pay for the child support. They clearly have culpability here by nature of the law.
So
I'm getting married to Chipotle.
So to tackle Tina's response, like in trying in an honest way, right? So an argument for abortion, right, is that many abortion advocates use is that these women oftentimes, in like I believe the statistics bear this out, that many of these women aren't there aren't new mothers who are getting this abortion, right? They have other children, right? And so they're making the financial decision. Part of it is the financial decision that I cannot afford to raise this one more child, right? Like this child will put me in a financial position that'll be deleterious to, I'm using that word, right? To my other children, right? Actively degrade their lives. So on the other side, a man could use the same reasoning, right? Well, I had this child maybe with another woman, right? Or maybe with the same woman, I don't know, whatever. But like just one more, and that's too much. It's just too much for me. It's going to, talking about taking the food out of children's mouths, well, I'll take the food out of the mouths of my existing children. I'll not being able to put the clothes on their backs. That would be that response, right?
But how expensive is a vasectomy?
That's what I was about to say. Listen, because like I have huge problems with the government.
Listen.
Oh, sorry.
No, please.
I have huge problems with the government goes, well, tough luck, woman, tough shit, should have closed your legs. Okay, well, men, it should have got that vasectomy. Because it's like, I mean, if you're going to look at that, go the other way, have a vasectomy. But also, to backtrack a little bit about the ways that...
Alternatively, I hear spironolactone at high doses is very effective.
But to backtrack a little bit about the waist step thing, I do want to see it from the perspective from a man, of the little thing. Although not even necessarily a man, because women have also been on this side of the courtroom, where it's definitely a very real issue where you know, the person who is not taking care of the child, you know, is like, you know, forced to like let out huge sums of money, and like maybe they're too much, you know, because like most times they're not too much, but you know, when you look at those celebrity cases and it's like $2 million a month, it's like, whoa. But you know, it's definitely a very real issue. Mostly just when like the person who is getting these checks is not putting it towards the child. And then when cases like that happen, I mean, the most logical thing would be to go to court. My uncle had to deal with this, and like and when you go to court as a man in that position, it is very hard because the court will be stacked against you. It's going to see you automatically as like, oh, you're just a lazy man. You just don't want to take care of your child. But like, I mean, it is still a very real thing to say, like, hey, I'm paying all this money. I wouldn't have a problem with it, except I know it's not going towards the child. So like from that perspective, I can see where men are coming from. But at the same time, it's like, okay, it's definitely our court system sucks. Okay, I'm sorry, but if you really have a problem with how the funds that are going towards your child are being spent, you have to fight it out in court. It's going to be tough. The courts are going to be stacked against you, but you just have to fight it out in court to get that situated and get, like, I don't know, your costs, you know, better spent, or like even have your child be put somewhere else to be taken care of.
Also, if you have a problem with
I've been informed, by the way, apparently you can't get a vasectomy until you're 35 or have had at least one kid.
That's stupid.
My friend just had one, and he's only 32, and he doesn't have any kids. So
yeah, I thought Chat was lying to me.
So go ahead, Jack.
Maybe if men didn't buy so much avocado toast, okay? Just stop buying avocado toast
These
right
men
now.
and their beer, right? And their, I don't know, what else do men do? I don't know.
So let's go to Jack and then
Or men's
Joe.
birth
And I do
control.
have a response for Lyra. But go ahead.
Also, I think it is a genuine problem that courts are stacked against men. However, we need to recognize that the reason courts tend to be stacked against men in these situations is because of patriarchal structures that tend to make men behave in certain ways towards children that make them less safe in a home environment, which, you know, we can argue about how that's bullshit in a certain percentage of times, but part of the issue is we need to, like, we legislate around what is, not what should be. And so when it comes to this, we need to actively, and this is why men, if you are upset about this, you should be working with feminists to try and dismantle these patriarchal power structures and disrupt these behaviors. Then we can have more unbiased courts that actually take men seriously in these cases.
Go ahead, Joe. And then I want to respond to Lyra. Go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, I personally think that it is a fallacy that courts are stacked against men. I think there is a lot of transparency when you look at actual court documents. Judges, wherever possible, even in cases of proven domestic violence, push for 50-50 custody because that has the best outcomes for the child. And family court focuses on what has the best outcome for the child. And fathers' rights movement have gained excessive strength over the last couple of decades. And I just think if you actually look at court breakdowns and what courts use to decide their metrics, and the fact that even in cases of domestic violence, courts push for equal custody between parents, I just think it is something that is getting more and more airtime, and we hear it a lot, but I do not think that there is substantiated proof. I know for a fact there's no substantiated proof of that being the case in Australia and the UK. I don't know enough about the American system.
In the US, it's the opposite. In the US, there is evidence that it is biased in favor of men. Yes, I'm a political scientist. This is something that I've looked into previously.
By fathers and rights for fathers groups.
So they've done both case study analyses and they've done large meta-analyses. It is consistently.
If you could link some, that'd be good.
States.
Just so if I'm in this discussion again, I have access to stuff like
U.S.
that.
courts are fucked. They're almost always against men. They're almost always biased on the basis of skin color. Like it's.
Oh no, they're definitely racist. I just I want, because I know for a fact that we've had the fathers' rights organizations in Australia have made significant gains over the last decade, in particular because major parties have made policy concessions with minor parties on fathers' rights issues in order to get bigger policy issues through, and they use lies like this to really push amplifying the rights of men in family court more than is necessary and more than is fair. So that was one. Two, Prime, this comes back to this thing about framing the issue. There is no such thing as wallet autonomy. There is such thing as bodily autonomy. When we're talking about abortion, it's an issue about bodily autonomy. And that's why pro-choice is sort of sticky, because it makes it sound like, oh, it's up to a woman to choose. Therefore, you can make that analogy. You can say, well, a man should be able to choose if he's involved. No, it's got nothing to do with his body. It's got nothing to do with his body being co-opted for 9 months. It's got nothing to do with the fact that he has no control over his own personhood, his own body. That is not what custody arrangements are about. That is not what financial support arrangements are about. They are not analogous, because one is to do with your money, the money that goes toward your child. The other is to do with your actual physical control over your body. And the thing about like women spending the money on themselves and men not having the ability to get by, I think it's really interesting, because it's like, it then once again focuses on like, say you've got this millionaire dad who's paying $2 million, and suddenly this woman has a Range Rover and all this plastic surgery and she's got a Birkin bag, etc. It's like, okay, well, if you start to legislate saying that it shouldn't be proportional on the dad's income, then you're saying, well, the kid should have the bare minimum that is required to get by. Even if the dad had stayed in that child's life and been a 50-50 parent, the child would have had different opportunities and a different amount of money. That money is based on the life the child would have had given both parents' respective incomes. And mothers' incomes are looked at too when it comes to child support arrangements. So I guess you could say, yeah, all child support should be decided based on the absolute bare minimum cost that it takes to raise a child. But that doesn't seem very fair to me if you've got a dad who, I don't know, is playing in the Super Bowl and you've got the kid barely getting anything beyond what the court deems as being the base level necessary for a child to live. That doesn't seem fair either, surely.
I think that's a really good argumentation and great response. You and what Empress had said previously, I really like those responses. To you, Lyra, quickly, you said, why didn't you get that vasectomy? Well, maybe that would be a really good argumentation in like Australia or Canada, right? But not in the States, right? So we know people don't have access to medical care, right? All kinds of medical care that they need. So to say to a person, well, why didn't you do this thing, right? This preventative measure? Well, why didn't you also like take early screening for cancer? But well, I couldn't afford that.
Well, when I said that, it was intentionally. Yeah, I said that to be intentionally unfair, because it's like, it's very unfair when they apply the same logic to women. So it's very unfair to say, why don't you go say the vasectomy? It's also just as unfair to say, hey, well, you should have been on birth control. Well, I was. Well, you should have made it work a little bit better.
Well, you should
It's
like
very
go
unfair.
get like, oh well, why don't you just like go give birth? And it's like, for the same reasons that you like didn't just like go get a vasectomy.
Yeah. But I did mean that to be very, very like unfair, like just get a vasectomy, 3-head, because they apply the same logic to women. So
fair enough. Makes sense. All right. Yeah, I think we covered it. I think we actually had, well, I think it would just be very frustrating if you guys were encountering the argumentation that we did. And we took fucking 2 hours. Oh my god, to fight that. It was a whole thing. That happened on the stream. I wish you had been there. It would have been very helpful. Yeah, but okay. Anyway, thank you all. To my audience, we're going to go into our open walk-on panel. So the stream is not ending. Oh god, the stream is not ending. So stick right there. What we're going to do is we're going to give an outro to all these wonderful people. And then move on to the panel. So remember, we got more content coming your way. Start with Empress. Empress, thanks so much for coming through. I really appreciate it. As always, you provide a good time with your argumentation. I wish I've seen you, and actually we have been on the other side of a few things in the past, right? And it's always been fun. It's been a struggle. You're one of the
here and there,
tough ones to argue against, because you bring so many great facts, and you have a very clear perspective of these things. So anyway, I just enjoy having you around, is what I'm saying.
I love talking with you, Prime. I mean, like, I wasn't even trying to like do Twitch as a thing, and somehow I got affiliate, like just by being it all started with you, Prime. So if you want to check me out, you can find me on Twitch, Twitter, and YouTube. Technically, I don't really post much there yet. I'm trying to figure out what the branding is going to be at Professor. That's professor, except instead of an O, there's a wa. Follow, subscribe, do all the things. You can also, if you ever want to talk, I'm always online, almost always, at politics.gg or discord.gg/politics. Discord's largest and best politics server. It is definitely, there is no Warren Bossing say. And because they're not here to defend themselves, I won't say anything mean about CC. But you should also check out the Calliopean Club. They were on earlier, but they had to leave. It's a great place. The Forum and the Coliseum, both are necessary. We balance each other like a yin and a yang.
Okay, thank you so much. Next, we'll go to Tina. Tina, thank you so much for coming through. This was, again, not even last minute. It was negative minutes. We had already been live. But you have been so kind as to join us. Very much appreciated. Tina, it was really nice talking with you. Tell a little about yourself.
Hi guys, I am Tina_2 on Twitch. I was glad to be part of this tonight. It was very, very interesting and I had a lot of fun. I cover a lot of things. I cover Twitch politics, or cover politics from leftist perspective. I'll cover Canadian politics, and I'll also cover, issues about women's health such as PCOS and endometriosis. So come on and stop by. I stream every day at 11 a.m. Eastern Standard. I would love to see you shoot the shit with me and all that stuff. We have a lot of fun there.
Okay, thank you so much. And Tina and Empress's link on the chat, or Professor as well. His link is in the chat. It's very confusing, but okay. Moving on. Thank you so much, Lyra, for coming through. Like, really enjoy having you here. We've been on the All Black Everything panel. It was a lot of fun. People became fans of you very quickly, actually, from there, and so they demanded more, and I provide, of course. So Lyra, thank you for coming through once again. Tell a little about yourself.
I'm also very, very flattered that I've been so well received both by your community and also by all your lovely panelists. I had a very good time today. I learned so much today. I was taking mental notes, I didn't know that, I learned a lot of facts and things and perspectives that I hadn't even thought about or that I didn't even know. And that's one of my favorite things about coming on your panels. I learned a lot. I see a lot of new perspectives. Some that I sometimes don't always agree with, but still good to learn about nevertheless. But my name is Lyra Centauri. Hello, everyone. I do a bunch of random stuff. Well, not random, I'm sorry. But no, I'm lying. I do random stuff. I sing karaoke, pixel art, Minecraft. I just do a bunch of stuff. But if you want to hang out and vibe, sure, come over. It was very nice speaking on this panel with all of you. I learned a lot, and I hope I get to come back.
Okay, thank you so much. Next, Maddie Cakes, who now, it wasn't until you actually said it, then oh, that is a play on words. I didn't get it before.
Like patty cake.
Yeah, I did not get it before. It literally went over my head. All right, that's my fault. Maddie Cakes, you as well. You are always really ready to jump in and participate, which is very useful from a host perspective. I'm gonna tell you that. You're ready to jump into all these topics. So you're always welcome around. Maddie, tell the world about yourself.
Hi, I'm Maddie. I am a creative director, political strategist, and former digital marketer. And I mainly talk about politics, policy, and politics adjacent things on Twitch. I am also on Twitter as Madsmaru, MADSMARU. And tomorrow I have a great interview with the chairperson of the Minnesota Democratic Party State Disability Caucus. And we are going to be talking about disability rights and some of the big ticket issues that are, it's going to be really exciting. His name's Mike O'Brien. He's awesome. So that's going to be tomorrow on my channel at 5 p.m. Pacific, 8 p.m. Eastern. Mike's great. And he's already just in our chatting taught me so much about things that people with disabilities have to face and some of the issues that activists are pushing against. You will learn so much. So yeah.
Thanks.
And I love being here. Thank you.
Definitely. Well, the feeling's mutual. Riverboat Jack, one of our all-stars.
Hello.
Riverboat Jack. You came, you saw, you conquered, as usual. Riverboat Jack, really appreciate you spending more of your time here, like an unreasonable amount of time on my panels.
Hey, I come through for you, Prime. You send me a message, I'm here.
Thank you, and that actually means a lot because scheduling these things is a fucking nightmare. Riverboat Jack, tell the world about yourself.
My name is Riverboat Jack. I'm a trans lady sex worker, former video game journalist, current game developer. I don't know. I've done a ton of stuff. And I talk about how based socialism is and how we can make the world a better place by getting the people the means of production and also decommodifying society. So
Renaissance woman.
if all of that is interesting or any of that is interesting, come by my channel. I'm sure that I will be talking with my chat more about abortion and
Go
that
follow
topic
Jack right now.
apologize.
Right now.
Yeah, go follow me, give me money, give Prime some money, give me more money because Prime is getting more money off of this than me. It's okay. I love you, Prime. Everybody give money to Prime.
Thanks so much. Really appreciate that. Last but not least, we have Joe. Really serious. Let me tell you something about Joe. Joe is one of my illustrious mods, a co-host extraordinaire, and an amazing friend all around, right? I am Joe's #1 cheerleader, right? You need to understand that. I will fight you to the death for that title. Unless it involves getting bruised. I bruise really easily. So if we could maybe like on a slap fight for it, I'll definitely do that. Joe, Joe, thank you for coming through. I know this was a bit of an imposition on your schedule, but you still.
No, I'm sorry. I'm very busy at the moment.
I know. And you make time for this. You got a lot of IRL stuff going on, but you come on my rinky-dink internet show and spread your amazing knowledge in this field. So like you raise the level of discussion. You do this all the time when you come on my panels. You raise the level of discussion from wherever it was before. So definitely appreciate that. Can't get that anywhere else, really. So thank you, Joe, once again.
Thank you guys for having me, even though it's late. Thank you for engaging in like really good faith. I know sometimes I express myself in ways that are quite I don't know, rough at first. I don't want to say combative because I'm not combative, but I mean sometimes the viewpoint I put out at face like seems counterintuitive. So thank you for sticking with me and allowing me to explain my points of view beyond just like the first sentence. I stream. Look, I can't say I'm a streamer at this stage. I don't stream, but I do have a YouTube video coming out. I'm going to put it out in like an hour. So I'm going to drop my YouTube in the chat.
Please.
It's a philosophical investigation of the bimbo. So I'll be looking at Nietzsche and Baudrillard and a little bit of French existentialism. And then hopefully in the next week, I'm going to do a Twitch stream where I talk more rigorously because I do this video in character as a bimbo. But hopefully within the next week, I'll do a proper stream where I talk more in depth about Baudrillard's seduction and Nietzsche's beyond good and evil and that sort of stuff. So I really would appreciate it if you would watch my video when it comes out and let me know what you think.
Okay, all right, Joe. So, in case you don't know, and Joe does know, is that I'm going to promote the shit out of this video. All right, so it's not like you guys won't know. All right, understand? What I'm in the process of doing now, I'm going to create a chat command. I meant to do this before for Joe, right? So that you can get her YouTube link at any point in time. It's going to be exclamation point Joe. Don't type it in chat now because it's not going to work. So you guys can find it all. This video is going to be amazing. It's going to set YouTube on fire, right? And you don't want to miss it. You want to be one of the first people to see it, right? Saying I was on ground floor of Joe's amazing YouTube career, right? When she knocked ContraPoints off of her throne, right?
No, bow down to Contra for all time.
Any second, no. So
No,
and our DMs,
don't make us enemies.
and our DMs, Joe swore. She swore. No, it's happening. It's happening. That's my dream, to be #1 bread
I
tuber.
said this,
Right?
Natalie.
And I said it can happen. I said, like, well, these are lofty goals, Joe, right? And she said, well, I expect nothing less for myself. So when you want to be here, right? The start of her takeover of BreadTube. Oh, I'm gonna make sure you know. All right, so watch that video. She drops in an hour. She's been telling me she's gonna drop it any day now. All right.
Yeah, because it's really hard to make a video, actually, which I didn't realize when I started out. It's actually mad respect for any YouTuber ever.
So anytime, hopefully this time is for real, because I've been anticipating it, and unfortunately you'll be dropping it during my stream, because then I can't be the very first person to watch it, unless I watch it on stream. Maybe I stop stream. Would you like? No, I won't do that, because I want you to get individual views, and I want you to get individual views. Okay, so all right, fine. I won't be the first. It's gonna be tough to be your #1 cheerleader that way, but I won't be the first. But I'm definitely gonna make sure you guys don't forget it. So Joe, let me know when it's ready.
Thank you guys so much. Thank you for the panel as well.
Thank you all for stopping by. Very much appreciated. We're going to roll into our open walk-on panel right now. Any one of you is welcome to join us, but if not, thank you for spending your time, your energy, your passion, your knowledge with myself and my community. I know they appreciate it just as much as I do. Have a good one, everyone. Bye.
Thank you, Prime.
Bye.